Chapter 1191. Yuqianqiu. A wave of exclamations rang out from all directions. Fortunately, Bai Suzhen and Chu Ping were supporting Yuqianqiu, who had collapsed. Everyone instantly surrounded Yuqianqiu, who had fainted from vomiting blood. In an instant, chaos ensued. Everyone anxiously asked him what was wrong and if he was injured. The unshaven Chen Feng suddenly raised his head, his face filled with sorrow and helplessness. Xiao Wanqing and her son looked at each other in shock. They didn't expect Yuqianqiu to be so easily scolded to the point of vomiting blood and fainting. Things seemed to have really gotten out of hand. The two of them instantly panicked. They originally thought that by dragging Chen Feng along, Yuqianqiu wouldn't dare to do anything to them in public. However, if they were to really be struck by lightning, it would be strange for the mother and son not to be afraid. Hong Tailong was also extremely anxious. Yuqianqiu's mission of punishing on behalf of the heavens had yet to be completed. If something happened to Yuqianqiu, he really wouldn't be able to report back. In a panic, he squeezed into the group of women and grabbed Yuqianqiu to quickly examine him. How are they? The group of people looked at this expert anxiously. They aren't injured. Hong Tailong shook his head. However, his expression was somewhat grave as he said, "However, they have nowhere to vent their grief and indignation, so they fell ill from depression. This is even more troublesome. Mental illness is incurable, and cultivators are most afraid of this. If they can't walk out from their mental demons and fall into oblivion, they will be no different from the living dead. Sigh. How bitter is this mental illness? How did it end up like this?" In the next moment, everyone's gazes turned to the family of three. Many people's eyes were almost spitting fire, as if they wanted to skin the three of them alive. Chen Feng's head slowly pressed down again. Xiao Wanqing and her son couldn't hide the fear in their eyes. At this moment, Chu Ping suddenly squeezed out of the crowd. With tears in her eyes, she said in grief and indignation, "What are you guys trying to do? I've already promised him that I'll help you talk to him and beg him to let you out. Why don't you give him any face at all?" Xiao Wanqing's imposing manner weakened a little as she said, "How many times have you promised him? It's been so many years, and there has been no news from you. Other than saying that he hasn't come back, you're just saying that he hasn't come back. He comes and goes without a trace. How do we know if he really hasn't come back? Or if he has come back and you didn't tell us? Or if he didn't agree? Now that we know he's back, we naturally have to seek justice from him." Justice. Wei Chuanqiu stared at the three of them with a cold glint in his eyes. He raised his hand and twirled the mouse-like beard at the corner of his mouth and said with a chuckle, "You've stepped into the threshold of cultivation. It's either you die or I die, yet you still want to seek justice? I might as well." He slowly walked over and said, "I might as well give you justice and end all troubles once and for all." His killing intent had been aroused. Guan Yu hurriedly stood between them and cupped his hands in front of his chest. "Everyone, let's talk things out. There's no need to be so hostile. Stop arguing." Bai Suzhen's faint sigh rang out. She separated the crowd and walked out. She looked at the family of three coldly and said, "I've helped Yuqianqiu make the decision today. Don't you just want to leave? Yuqianqiu can come and go as he pleases in the human world, the immortal realm, and the underworld. You can go anywhere you want. When his body recovers, I'll persuade him to send you away." Some people looked at Bai Suzhen in confusion, while others looked pensive. Those who knew the inside knew that the immortal realm and the underworld were now the rulers of the demonic path. 71 of the 72 worlds in the human world were controlled by the demonic path. It was estimated that the demonic path would not allow cultivators to go to the sealed world. With the cultivation of this family, they wouldn't even be qualified to be a snack for the demonic path. Bai Suzhen hated this family of three to the bone. She wanted them dead. But she didn't want Yuqianqiu to have any burden in his heart, so she let them decide their own fate. Chen Feng remained silent and did not say anything. The mother and son, on the other hand, whispered to each other and discussed. They first excluded the underworld where the dead lived, but in their understanding, they felt that the immortal world was naturally better than the human world. The peaceful scene of celestial flowers, celestial grasses, and immortals roaming the world of longevity was the dream of many cultivators in the human world. After coming to a conclusion, Xiao Wanqing clenched her teeth and said, "By Suzhen, this is what you promised. We didn't force you." Everyone heard it with their own ears. "I hope you won't go back on your words. Our family of 3 wants to go to the immortal realm." As soon as she said this, everyone sighed in their hearts. Now that the 3 realms were in chaos, killing was everywhere, and countless people had died. It was so good to live a peaceful life here, but they just had to go to the immortal realm where the demonic path ruled. Wasn't this courting death? I naturally won't go back on my words. I believe that Yu Qianqiu will still give me this little bit of face. As you wish, after Yu Qianqiu recovers, I'll get him to send you to the immortal realm. After Bai Suzhen finished speaking, she resolutely turned around with a cold expression and got everyone to help carry Yu Qianqiu in. And Xiao Wanqing's family of 3 left with their tails between their legs. Everyone crowded around Yu Qianqiu and carried him into the room of the Misty Palace. When they placed him on the bed, they discovered that his face was deathly pale, but his cheeks had an intoxicating redness, which was extremely abnormal. It was a sign of his corporeal body's final radiance. Hong Tailong sucked in a breath of cold air and said angrily, "What is this guy trying to do? Is he trying to end his own life? Hurry up and help him circulate his body's functions. This guy is seeking death to end all his troubles." Everyone was taken aback and fought to lend a hand. Hong Tailong immediately roared, "So many of you attacking randomly. Do you want to cripple his physical body? Everyone take turns. He already has the intention to seek death and is unwilling to circulate his body normally. Anyway, everyone take turns. Don't let his body stop circulating normally." Everyone was submissive, and the few ladies were so anxious that they started crying. In the end, the 100 Charms beauty was the first to benefit from the situation. She supported the unconscious Yu Qianqiu and circulated her energy to circulate his body normally. ****. Hong Tailong paced back and forth in the room, cursing incessantly. What did this two-faced, vicious and merciless fellow do? Quite a number of people have died. Everyone can understand the sadness in his heart. After all, none of us feel good about it. But with this guy's thick skin, he shouldn't be unable to take the blow of failure, right? If that's really the case, this old dragon really can't imagine how he managed to survive until now. What did this guy do, or what did he encounter? Right at this moment, the room suddenly fell silent. Everyone's gazes were focused on Yu Qianqiu. They heard him mumbling, and everyone immediately focused their attention to listen. Unfortunately, the words were too vague, and they couldn't hear them clearly. Suddenly, a mumble that sounded like laughter was heard clearly. "Zixia, your butt is so bouncy. Let me have a taste of those 2 lumps on your chest." The room instantly became so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. The group of women who were choking with sobs stopped crying. Everyone looked at each other, thinking that they had heard wrongly. However, from everyone's expressions, they could tell that they hadn't heard wrongly. Finally, everyone looked at Hong Tailong suspiciously, doubting his words. A person who could say such words while unconscious. Would he have the intention to seek death? Hong Tailong was even more dumbfounded. Yin Yu, who was sitting on the bed, suddenly smiled through her tears and said, "This dead man really doesn't change his lust. He's already like this, but he's still thinking about those messy things even in his dreams." Suddenly, everyone exclaimed in unison, "Not good." Although Yu Qianqiu's face was still smiling lasciviously, tears were flowing out from the corners of his tightly shut eyes. This wasn't considered much, but the tears gradually turned red, and in the end, blood flowed out directly. It was as if he was weeping for blood. Everyone panicked. They didn't know why he was so sad, but they had clearly heard his obscene words just now, and the lascivious smile on his face was still there. Hong Tailong quickly went over to examine him. After a long time, he slowly let out a breath and said, "There's nothing wrong with his body. It's good that you've cried it out. It's good that you've cried it out. It's good that you've vented it out." As he said that, he continued to say to the Allure Beauty, "Continue to help him maintain the normal circulation of his body. Don't stop. This scoundrel is sick in the head. He might not want to live again later." When everyone heard that it was a good thing, They more or less heaved a sigh of relief. However, they saw him suddenly turn around and ask, "Who is Zixia?" Hibiscus wiped away her tears, bowed and replied, "It's that pair of mother and daughter that he captured just now. They're also Yan Zhuixing's younger sister, Yan Zixia. He met Yan Zixia not long after he stepped into the cultivation world. The two of them seemed to have a relationship when they were on supporting Immortal Island. Later on, for some unknown reason, maybe it was because of Yan Zhuixing, the two of them didn't interact anymore." Hong Tailong made an O sound, looked at Yu Qianqiu, nodded slightly and said in a low voice, "I think I understand. This guy might have killed that pair of mother and daughter with his own hands. But if you can injure yourself to this extent, why would you do it?" Everyone was silent. They all thought that Yu Qianqiu was heartbroken because he had killed his old lover with his own hands. However, they didn't know how Yu Qianqiu killed them, or how he injured others and himself. The hallucinatory immortal city was destroyed, and Wan Gutong's myriad saint mountain was temporarily taken over by Demon Lord Three Knights as a temporary base. In the main room of Myriad Saint Palace's backyard, Demon Lord Three Knights stood with his hands behind his back, and Eunuch Li was by his side. The two of them frowned as they looked at Yan Zhuixing, who was unconscious on the bed. The Clear Sky Great Demon King was sitting by the bed, taking care of him. "Mother, sister, Yu Qianqiu, I'm going to kill you." Yan Zhuixing repeatedly said these words in his nightmare. The expression on his face was either crying or gritting his teeth. Even though he was extremely excited, he remained unconscious this entire time. Even Demon Monarch Three Knights and Eunuch Li were helpless against him. Suddenly, Yan Zhuixing's body straightened. The Clear Sky Great Demon King moved as fast as lightning, and a handkerchief appeared by his mouth. Another mouthful of blood sprayed out. The Clear Sky Great Demon King showed the bloodied handkerchief to the two of them, then shook his head helplessly and threw it to the side. "This Yu Qianqiu is too ruthless. He kills without leaving a trace." Demon Lord Three Knights looked at Yan Zhuixing and sighed. No one can accept such a thing happening in front of so many people. AI. As long as Yu Qianqiu doesn't die, Yan Zhuixing won't be able to face anyone. What's more, he's the Vice Palace Lord of our Demon Palace. And it happened right under our noses. It's a huge blow to the prestige of us and the entire Demon Dao. It's not a solution for him to continue like this. Eunuch Li's expression was solemn. It's already been 10 days. No matter how high his cultivation is, he can't keep vomiting blood like this. We have to think of a way to resolve his heart demon and wake him up. Chapter 1192. It's not like I don't want him to wake up as soon as possible. If something happens to him, how am I going to answer to Lord Demonic God of the Deity Realm? Demon Lord Three Knights let out a long sigh, turned around, and slowly walked out. When he reached the empty Myriad Sacred Palace, he suddenly looked at Floating Cloud and Grey Dog outside the door and said, "The Blue Sea Essence can cleanse the physical body and mind. It should be able to wake him up. It seems like this is the only way." Eunuch Li, who was following behind him, frowned and said, "Even if we find the Blue Sea Essence, he is still unconscious. He can't resist the corrosion of the Blue Sea Essence on his mind. Can he withstand it? What if he loses his mind? You must know that Lord Demonic God also lost his mind because he couldn't resist it. He lost his mind and killed his wife, unable to differentiate between friend and foe. This was also because Lord Demonic God's mind was strong enough to forcefully reverse the situation. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. I also don't want to take this risk, but we can't just watch and do nothing, right?" Demon Lord Three Knights turned back to look at him, then looked into the distance and said in a deep voice, "The reason why Lord Demonic God chose him must be because his mind is strong enough to withstand the torture of the 7-star acupoint piercing art. With this strong will, I think he might be able to withstand it. Vice Palace Lord, it's not a solution to continue dragging this out. Since Demon Lord has made his decision, I'll make the arrangements now." After Eunuch Li obtained the decree, he quickly made preparations to head to the Blue Sea Death Trap. In Utopia's Misty Palace, Yu Qianqiu had also been unconscious for more than 10 days. A few women took turns to watch over him, and they were all a little anxious. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu's mind was filled with the ambiguous scenes of him and Yin Zixia on Fuxian Island. The two of them lived a blissful life in the mulberry garden, and lived a world of their own until they grew old. There were no grudges or disturbances. None of the people he knew before or after appeared in his dream. Even Hibiscus, who should have appeared in the mulberry garden, did not exist, let alone Yan Juexing. There seemed to be no messy people in his memory. While the two of them were strolling by the seaside, the romantic sea in front of them suddenly became turbulent. In the blink of an eye, the wind and clouds changed abruptly. The entire sea suddenly turned blood red. It had already become a vast sea of blood. Yin Zixia, who was holding his arm, suddenly turned into an incomparably ferocious blood snake. She tightly coiled around him, trying to drill into his 7 orifices. Yu Qianqiu turned pale with fright. He felt that this scene was very familiar. All of a sudden, a boundless golden light rose from the sea of blood. Wherever the golden light shone, the blood snake turned into smoke that wailed mournfully. The endless sea of blood dissipated. The last golden light shone directly on his glabella. Yu Qianqiu instantly woke up from his slumber. He recalled the scene where he was struck by Yin Juexing's demonic eye. ************************************************************ Yu Qianqiu bellowed angrily. He opened his eyes abruptly and sat up from the bed. As he looked around furiously, he saw many familiar faces looking at him in panic. They seemed to be extremely anxious and afraid. Hong Tailong and the rest, who were helpless outside, suddenly heard Yu Qianqiu's loud voice. They immediately returned and swarmed into the room. What am I doing? Yu Qianqiu was stunned when he saw everyone. He recalled the cause and effect of the matter. Suddenly, he raised his hand and slapped his forehead. He smiled bitterly and said, "I had such a long dream. What are you all doing here?" As he said that, he jumped off the bed. Hong Tailong came over with a face full of suspicion. He observed carefully and asked, "Are you really all right? *********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** Brat. When everyone heard him curse again, they immediately felt relieved. They confirmed that he was really all right. Hong Tailong circled around him and sized him up. He clicked his tongue and said, "Brat, you vomited blood and fainted. You slept for almost half a month. You made us worried to death. Previously, you were half dead. Who would have thought that you would be alive and kicking in the blink of an eye? Looks like we were worried for nothing." "I slept for half a month?" Yu Qianqiu moved his slightly stiff body and said in astonishment. Seeing everyone staring at him and nodding in agreement, he fell silent and thought about what had happened. After a long while, he smiled bitterly and shook his head with a pensive expression. He said, "I was so angry. I can't bear to look back on it." Everyone had roughly guessed what he had done. They were afraid that he would take things too hard, so they advised him to let bygones be bygones and not take it to heart. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but miss those who had passed away even more as he listened to the assortment of comforting voices and looked at the concerned faces around him. Then he recalled that Xiao Wanqing's family had come to make a scene before he fainted. He hurriedly asked Chu Pinger how the matter had been handled. Chu Ping looked at Bai Suzhen, and Bai Suzhen immediately told her about her reply to their family. Yu Qianqiu fell silent for a moment before slowly saying, "Gather all the cultivators in Utopia to the military camp. I'll talk to them." Chu Ping immediately made the arrangements. Not long after, all the cultivators in Utopia gathered in the spacious military drill ground. About 90% of the hero army had been lost, and there were only about 1,000 people left. Now there were more women than men in Utopia. The crowd below the stage watched as Yu Qianqiu slowly ascended the stage by himself. Standing firmly in the center of the stage, Yu Qianqiu scanned the crowd below. His gaze fell on Xiao Wanqing's family of 3 in the front row. It's understandable that some people want to leave Utopia and regain their freedom. I won't force them. A forceful melon won't be sweet, and it might even cause a rift. I can send you out, but on account of our past friendship, there are some things I have to make clear, lest it's too late for you to regret it. Yu Qianqiu's gaze slowly shifted away from the family of 3. He looked at everyone and continued, "Perhaps everyone doesn't know the situation outside. Now that the 3 realms are in chaos and the demonic path is rampant, Countless people have died under the demonic claws. There's something I have to admit. Before I returned, because of my mistake, millions of cultivators in the human world died. You can't imagine how arrogant the demonic flames are. Therefore, I advise everyone that Utopia is the safest place. There's no need for everyone to take the risk. Furthermore, I can guarantee that from today onwards, everyone can live freely in Utopia. I will definitely not use anything to interfere with everyone. Of course, if anyone has any trouble, you can look for Ethereal Palace to resolve it. Ethereal Palace will not ignore it. What do you think? Everyone did not expect their leader to say such a thing. They looked at each other. Xiao Wanqing suddenly took a step forward and said aggressively, "From what you said, could it be that you want to persuade us to stay?" "That's indeed what I mean." Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "I really don't want to see the people in Utopia suffer any more losses. I hope you can understand my painstaking efforts. If you don't believe me, you can ask the heroic team members who survived. They have personally experienced what happened outside." "Yu Qianqiu," Xiao Wanqing's son shouted. He called out Yu Qianqiu's name and stood up. He angrily pointed at the few remaining members of the Hero Legion and angrily said, "They are all your people, and they know that you are vicious and merciless. Didn't they say whatever you said and speak up for you? If you don't want to let us out, just say it. Why do you have to beat around the bush? It's beneath your status and you'll become a laughing stock." This fellow had heard and witnessed his mother's curse at Yu Qianqiu since he was young. As time passed, he had almost treated Yu Qianqiu as an irreconcilable enemy. He had no choice but to win against Yu Qianqiu. Otherwise, it would be strange if he did not cut Yu Qianqiu into pieces. The moment he said that, Bai Suzhen and the rest wore hostile expressions. Even Hong Tailong and the others who had come to Utopia for the first time could not stand this kid. It was one thing for him to say such words if he had the ability, but he was so stubborn even though he did not have the ability. Wasn't he courting death? Yu Qianqiu glared at Chen Feng with a cold light in his eyes. So many people had died, and he was still angry. However, when he saw Chen Feng's dispirited expression, he suppressed the anger in his heart and said with a cold smile, "Brat, the number of people I've killed is more than the number of people you've met in your entire life combined. If I want to kill you, I can do it with a flick of my finger. It's even easier than stepping on an ant. Today, on account of your father, I won't hold it against a junior like you." Hearing Yu Qianqiu threaten her son, Xiao Wanqing roared hysterically, "Bai Suzhen, you promised to let us go to the celestial world. Why didn't you keep your word?" Hong Tailong and the group of people who had experienced life and death outside shook their heads when they heard this. Bai Suzhen was just about to reply when Yu Qianqiu pressed his hand down, indicating that he should handle it. "Chen Feng, I'll only ask you one question." Yu Qianqiu stared at Chen Feng and said in a deep voice, "If you say leave, I'll let your family go. If you say stay, I'll let your family stay. You're the head of the family. I can ignore the rude words of this mother and son pair. I only need to see your attitude before making a decision." The unshaven Chen Feng hugged his wine gourd and looked up at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated expression. When Xiao Wanqing saw his cowardly expression, her anger flared up. She regretted that she was blinded by greed and agreed to marry this useless thing. Xiao Wanqing turned around and pulled Chen Feng to the front in front of everyone. She said sternly, "You've been a coward your whole life. Do you want us to be cowardly forever? Father, the outside world is so big. There's a place for us to stay. Why do we have to stay here and live our lives under the whims of others?" His son stomped his feet at Chen Feng in exasperation. The mother and son sandwiched Chen Feng in the middle and bombarded his ears left and right. Chen Feng seemed to turn a deaf ear to them and stared straight at Yu Qianqiu. Only when Xiao Wanqing nudged him again did he silently nod at Yu Qianqiu. "Chen Feng, your family really wants to go to the celestial world? I've said everything that needs to be said. Are you sure you won't regret it? Once I let you go, I won't care about you anymore." Yu Qianqiu reminded again. "Yu Qianqiu," Xiao Wanqing gritted her teeth and said, "Why do you have to scare an honest man? Do you have any credibility? As long as you don't scheme against us, what do we have to regret? Are you going to let us go or not?" Chapter 1193. Plotting against you? Yu Qianqiu sneered in disdain. He couldn't be bothered to argue with this woman. He looked at Chen Feng and shook his head. Since you've already made up your mind, I have nothing else to say. I'll send you to the celestial world later. After saying that, he looked at everyone and said, Who else is willing to go to the celestial world? Just say it. I'll send you all away together. Everyone, there's no need to worry. If you want to leave, just say it. I, Yu Qianqiu, swear to the heavens that I'll definitely not harm you behind your backs. As soon as he swore, there were a lot of people who were ready to make a move. Xiao Wanqing looked back a few times and saw several women who had a good relationship with her were trembling with fear. Obviously, they also wanted to leave this place. Seeing that someone had taken the lead, over 100 people came out one after another. There were men and women, and they stood in a group below the stage. All of them seemed uneasy. The hero army that had returned from outside naturally remained indifferent. They knew that Yu Qianqiu was speaking the truth. It was indeed too dangerous outside. Yu Qianqiu looked down and sighed inwardly. It seemed like a forceful melon was not sweet. There were still many people who were dissatisfied with him. After a moment he sighed and said, Everyone disperse. I won't stop you if you want to leave. Go back and pack your things first. As long as you feel that the things in Utopia are useful to you, you can take them away. I'll give you an hour to pack. I'll wait for you here. After saying that, he closed his eyes. Everyone looked at each other, and many revealed looks of joy. It seemed like he was really going to let them leave. Otherwise, there was no need for him to let them pack their things. The crowd immediately dispersed one after another, leaving only Chen Feng on the stage. Hong Tailong and the others looked at each other. No one went to disturb Yu Qianqiu, who was on the stage. Chen Feng looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was no longer the same as before. He was in a daze as he recalled how he had been abducted when they first met in the 100 Flowers Valley. Back then, he had been a little unhappy, but thinking back, before he had followed Yu Qianqiu, his days outside had been very miserable, and he had relied on a small stall to make a living. In fact, after coming here, he had been the most carefree. However, after marrying Xiao Wanqing, he had started to become more and more unhappy. Boss. Chen Feng suddenly called out to Yu Qianqiu, who had his eyes closed and was silent on the stage. Yu Qianqiu's eyelids trembled, and he slowly opened his eyes to look at him. In the end, he gently landed beside him from the stage and took out the wine gourd that Chen Feng was hugging. With a flash of true samadhi fire in his hand, he instantly turned it into ashes. Then he patted Chen Feng's shoulder and said, Pull yourself together after you go out. Don't drink anymore. Although the immortal world is dangerous, there's still a way out. If it's possible, I still want to persuade you to stay. Boss. Chen Feng smiled bitterly. The mother and son are determined. It's useless to say anything. Yu Qianqiu really wanted to scold him for being a good-for-nothing, but he held back in the end. After thinking for a while, he seriously warned, If you encounter danger in the immortal world, you can say my name and say that you're my people. Even if you end up in the hands of the demonic path, when they hear that you're my people, they'll definitely want to use you as hostages to threaten me. At the very least, they won't harm your lives. Whatever they ask you, just tell them the truth. They won't be able to enter Utopia, so you can suffer less. After that, I'll think of a way to save you. Chen Feng's eyes were red as he looked at Yu Qianqiu. He was so emotional that he couldn't speak. Hong Tailong and the rest sighed and shook their heads when they heard that. They deeply felt that Yu Qianqiu was looking for trouble for them. Guan Yu, who was standing beside Bai Suzhen, also sighed slightly. To be honest, he didn't really believe Yu Qianqiu's words before, but now he believed it. An hour passed very quickly, and the people who wanted to leave came back one after another. This time, there were more than 100 people. They were people who wanted to leave, but were afraid that Yu Qianqiu would go back on his word. However, when they saw that Yu Qianqiu was really going to let them go, there were more than 200 people in front of them, and most of them were women. Everyone had brought enough things that they could take with them, especially Xiao Wanqing and her son, who were carrying bags of all sizes. Their bodies were also bulging. Chen Feng scanned them with his divine sense, and realized that they were filled with bulging storage bags. He did not know how much valuable utopia had they brought with them. He immediately pointed at their bags in shame and said with a red face, You. He was so angry that he could not speak. Xiao Wanqing looked at Yu Qianqiu and snorted coldly. You've served him for so many years and worked hard without any complaints. Even if you don't make any contributions, you've worked hard. You deserve what you've taken. Do you really think that you can live empty-handed in the immortal world? If you don't prepare more things, what are you going to do in the future? Are you going to continue begging for food when you go to the immortal world? All right. Stop arguing, Chen Feng. She's right, Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. Chen Feng instantly felt ashamed. He sighed and stomped his feet without saying anything. Everyone, you'll know when you get to the immortal world. Yu Qianqiu reminded them one last time. He opened his hand and enveloped the 200 people with his divine sense, instantly sending them away. These 200 people had indeed been sent to the immortal world by Yu Qianqiu. They appeared in the valley where Yu Qianqiu had first arrived in the immortal world. Yu Qianqiu hoped that they would have a good omen so that they could start from the beginning and go further. He really didn't have any ill intentions towards them. At the same time, this place was not far from the small town where the Four Links Chamber of Commerce was located. However, they didn't seem to be as lucky as Yu Qianqiu. The moment they appeared in the valley, they heard the sounds of intense fighting coming from afar. Their expressions instantly changed. Everyone rushed to the top of the mountain to take a look. They discovered that the fighting had quickly ended, and most of the small town in front of them had been reduced to ruins. Suddenly, a figure flashed by and fell into the valley. He was covered in blood and panting heavily. It was Four Links Chamber of Commerce's Nan Tianlong. He had lost an arm. Chen Feng gathered his courage and led the way down. He helped Nan Tianlong up and asked, "What is this place?" A group of people also followed. Immortal World's Four Links Chamber of Commerce. Nan Tianlong didn't think too much about why the other party would ask such a question. Instead, he grabbed Chen Feng's arm and begged, "The demonic path massacred my Four Links Chamber of Commerce and captured my junior sister. Who can help me find my son-in-law Wu Xiong in the netherworld and ask for help? My son-in-law will reward you greatly." Everyone jumped in fright. They encountered a massacre from the demonic path as soon as they arrived. It turned out that Yu Qianqiu wasn't trying to scare them. The demonic path was indeed very arrogant in the immortal world. Chen Feng absent-mindedly pushed Nan Tianlong away. He looked at his wife and son, whose faces were pale. He smiled bitterly and said, "Are you satisfied now? Bastards! They actually managed to escape from a small Four Links Chamber of Commerce. Search everywhere. Those who dare to stubbornly resist our demonic path army cannot be left alive." An angry shout that caused everyone's hearts to tremble came from afar. The people in the valley immediately ran for their lives. However, the people who were searching soon arrived in the sky above them. When they saw the people running away, they immediately laughed and called out to their companions, "There are actually so many women. We can't touch that moo bitch, but we can at least touch them." A dozen people quickly rushed over. The cultivation of the people from Utopia was too low. How could they outrun these people from the demonic path? Fortunately, they had more people. There were more than 200 of them. They scattered and fled in panic. These dozen people really couldn't take care of them all at once. However, these people's gazes were all attracted by the big and small bags on Xiao Wanqing and her son. They thought that they contained something valuable. These demonic path people didn't hide their greed. They didn't give in to each other, and wanted to take it for themselves. They actually all chased after the family of three. They quickly caught up to them. Chen Feng overestimated himself, and wanted to stop them to buy time for his wife and son. In the end, he was killed on the spot because he resisted. It was unknown why he didn't say the words that Yu Qianqiu told him in time to save his life. Perhaps he didn't have the time, or perhaps he didn't want to say it. The mother and son were quickly caught up and restrained. The dozen people fought over the things in Xiao Wanqing and her son's bags. Some sharp-eyed people discovered that the mother and son's clothes were also stuffed with things. They tore off their clothes on the spot. The man's naked body was still okay, but Xiao Wanqing's appearance was indeed not bad. Her snow-white and plump chest immediately attracted the unscrupulous demonic fanatic's lustful lust. They immediately stripped her naked and took turns to defile her. Because her son's cries of sorrow and blood disturbed others' fun, he was chopped into two without any reason. After being abused by the group of demons, Xiao Wanqing, who had fainted, didn't have a way out. After they were done, she was chopped into 8 pieces. In fact, if it wasn't for the mother and son carrying too many things that attracted the attention of the demonic path people, they might have been able to escape like the others. Although they didn't know what their future would be, at least they would be safe for the time being. But then again, they had attracted the attention of the demonic path people, which was equivalent to saving the lives of others. It could be said that they died a worthy death. In the ruined Four Links Chamber of Commerce, the restrained Mu Tianjiao wanted to cry as she looked at the cold-faced demon who stood with his hands behind his back. She originally wanted to commit suicide so that she wouldn't fall into the hands of the demonic path, but her reaction was too slow and she was restrained on the spot. Little did she know that the person standing in front of her was the domineering Great Demon King under Demon King 3 Nights. His cultivation level was much higher than hers. Once he saw that she had thoughts of committing suicide, he restrained her at lightning speed, causing Mu Tianjiao's plan to fail. You can't die now. You might be of some use when we attack the Netherworld Divine Manor. If you're useless, it won't be too late for you to die then. After saying that, the domineering Great Demon King grabbed her and flew away. In Utopia's military camp, Yu Qianqiu was still standing on the general roll call without saying a word. He didn't know that they had encountered trouble after sending Chen Feng and the others out. After standing silently for a long time, he suddenly gritted his teeth with a gloomy expression. The lives of 1,000,000 cultivators. Even if Wen Rue revealed the secret of the base, it's impossible for Wen Rue to open the sealed Divine Ruin Realm. I still can't figure out how 3 Knights and the others entered the Divine Ruin Realm. Chapter 1194. No one present could answer this question. Seeing him walking down with a gloomy expression, he slowly walked out of the military camp alone. Hong Tailong strode after him and consoled him with kind words. There will come a day when everything will be cleared up. Right now, the most important thing is to get rid of San Yi and that filial guy. It won't be much of a problem to deal with the rest of the Devil Path people. You think I don't want to? I want to kill the 2 of them right now. Yu Qianqiu stopped, turned around and asked. But the problem is that we can't defeat them at all. What's worse is that the demon god from the divine realm will interfere from time to time. Can't you think of a way to get some relationship with the divine realm to help? I wanted to. Hong Tailong smiled bitterly. But even if I invite Coiling Dragon Old Ancestor, we won't be a match for the demon god. Moreover, how would I dare to return to the divine realm now? But in my opinion, the demon god won't dare to interfere with the lower realm. Otherwise, the Tao won't ignore it. We should focus on dealing with the one in front of us. It's useless for us to think too much about the divine realm. By the way, your master seems to be quite capable. He can actually cultivate in the boundary of heavens. Why didn't he ask your master to come out and help? My master is indeed powerful, but it's not like you didn't hear Granny Yan's words. Currently, he can only fight evenly with a great god early stage expert. Think about it, even a great god middle stage fire soul profound weapon isn't a match for that guy. I'm afraid it's useless even if I ask my master to come out now. I don't want him to take that risk. Besides, Yu Qianqiu paused and shook his head. You don't know my master. He has never cared about my matters. I'm afraid it's useless even if I ask him. Then what should we do? Hong Tailong frowned and muttered to himself. It seems that we still have to find a way to capture that earth spirit called Hutu. That's for sure. But we can't guarantee success. So, we have to hurry up and try another thing. Maybe it's a good idea. Yu Qianqiu looked at Bai Suzhen, who was slowly following behind him, and muttered to himself thoughtfully. Blue sea essence. Beyond the vast continent was a boundless ocean. 2 streams of light streaked across the sky at high speed. Eunuch Li carried Yan Juexing on his back as he followed Demon Lord 3 Knights in a rapid flight. The 2 of them did not tell anyone that they had come out this time. mainly because they were afraid that someone would find out and take the opportunity to cause trouble. After all, the two of them were the key to the demonic path's ability to sweep through the three realms. The two of them arranged things properly and then quietly left. After flying for an entire day above the boundless sea, the azure sea in front of them suddenly turned into a bright snow blue color. The two of them exchanged a glance and knew that they had arrived at the extraterritorial blue sea. The reason why this sea had turned into a snow blue color was because of the legendary meteorite sleeping in the depths of the sea. The sky was high and the sea was wide. Sporadic islands would occasionally pass by below them. This was not the first time the two of them had come here. They knew that once they stepped into the extraterritorial blue sea, they would be on the edge of danger. No matter how high their cultivation was, they did not dare to be careless here. So they slowed down their flying speed. A few hours later, the Inferno Mystic weapon was driving the flying shuttle, carrying Yu Qianqiu, and was also flying over here. Yu Qianqiu had asked Wei Chuanqiu about the approximate location of the Blue Sea Death Realm. Then, he came alone with the Inferno Mystic weapon. Hong Tailong wanted to join in the fun, but Yu Qianqiu considered that he had not recovered from his injuries. Furthermore, it would be a burden if they ran into danger. So he let Hong Tailong recuperate in peace in Utopia. This was the first time Yu Qianqiu had arrived at the immortal world's boundless sea death realm. With the protection of the mid-stage great god Inferno Mystic weapon, he was in the mood to look around. The moment he entered the snow blue sea, he slowed down his flying speed after receiving Wei Chuanqiu's reminder. When they encountered sporadic islands, he would occasionally throw a small silver ball down for safety purposes. The two people in front and him behind did not know that the other party had come here. When ferocious brown reefs appeared in the sea in front of them, the expressions of the three knights Demon Lord and Uniquely turned solemn. They flew forward slowly and carefully. This was the famous Blue Sea Death Realm of the Three Realms. Once they entered this realm, they would feel a bone-chilling murderous intent. The blue waves of seawater washed over all sorts of strange-looking, jagged rocks. All sorts of strange rocks were filled with crisscrossing holes. It was unknown how they were formed. When the sea breeze blew past, it would produce all sorts of strange sounds that were either sharp or howling. Some of the islands that were submerged in seawater were also filled with holes of various sizes. Seawater flowed in and out of the holes. There was not even a flying seabird in sight. There were no living creatures on the dilapidated islands. It was a scene of death. Xiu xiu. Suddenly, countless snow-blue rays of light shot out from the ocean, shooting in all directions. Demon Lord, three knights, and Uniquely were greatly alarmed. The two of them used an unbelievable speed to quickly teleport and dodge, using their astonishing eyesight to quickly find the blind spots of the beams of light, dodging this wave of attacks that came from the bottom of the ocean. However, looking into the distance, one could still see unpredictable snow-blue pillars of light shooting into the sky. Three knights and Uniquely seemed to be very afraid of the pure energy light pillars coming from the bottom of the sea. They carefully flew forward, not daring to touch them. The two of them had been here before, so they knew that there was still a distance to the center of the Blue Sea Death Realm. There was an island in the center where they could avoid danger. However, it was not a place that ordinary people could reach. Only those with high cultivation or those who risked their lives to bet their luck would be able to reach it. That was their destination. However, it was this distance that caused the two experts to be as alarmed as they were before. Although Yu Qianqiu had heard Wei Chuanqiu mention the dangers of this place, Wei Chuanqiu hadn't been very involved in it back then, so he didn't know much. Yu Qianqiu, who hadn't experienced it deeply, didn't know the true dangers of this place. Even though he had already put away his flying shuttle, and had the Fire Soul Profound weapon carry him, his fearless flying speed was enough to make three knights and Uniquely speechless. However, this guy's luck was really good. Ever since he had entered the Blue Sea Perilous Realm, he hadn't encountered a single burst of destructive energy from the bottom of the sea. He had been advancing without a hitch, and he had even mistakenly thought that he hadn't reached the most dangerous place yet. As the saying goes, fortune and misfortune come together. Sometimes being too smooth wasn't a good thing. He and three knights were separated by several hours, but he boldly moved forward while three knights and Uniquely's speed slowed down. The result was obvious. There seems to be someone up ahead. If that's the case, my judgment is correct. This place isn't dangerous. The dangerous place is still up ahead. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself as he stared ahead. Then he waved his hand and said, "Hurry up and see who it is." The Fire Soul Profound Weapon naturally obeyed, and chased after them with a whoosh. Demon Monarch, 3 Knights and Eunuch Li's hearing wasn't something an ordinary person could compare to. When they suddenly heard the sound of an expert flying over, they looked back at each other. Their vision was also not something an ordinary person could compare to. Before Yu Qianqiu could clearly see the two of them. The two of them had clearly seen Yu Qianqiu and the Fire Soul Profound Weapon. When they saw that it was these two fellows who dared to rush here, their faces turned green. They practically shouted at the same time. Not good. There was no other reason for the two of them to feel that something was wrong. They had already experienced Yu Qianqiu's godly methods. Since the other party dared to rush here, it meant that they weren't afraid of the fatal light beams of the Blue Sea Death Realm. At this moment, the intention of chasing them was very clear. He clearly wanted to use the fatal light beams of the Blue Sea Death Realm to kill the two of them. The two of them were truly shocked by Yu Qianqiu. Looking around at this desolate death realm, the two of them didn't have the guts to rush here like Yu Qianqiu. If they were to encounter the explosion of the fatal light beams at the bottom of the sea, they would die. Thus, the two of them could only remain unchanging. Demon Monarch 3 Knights gnashed his teeth in hatred and said, "Bastard, how did he know we were here?" The Fire Soul Profound Weapon's flying speed wasn't slow. After the two of them closed the distance, Yu Qianqiu's eyes immediately went wide when he saw the appearance of the two people in front of him. The Fire Soul Profound Weapon, which was connected to his mind, immediately stopped. At this moment, the two of them were less than 1,000 meters apart. Both of them were staring at each other, clearly caught unprepared. At the same time, both of them could see the clues from the other's expression. It was obvious that they had accidentally bumped into each other. However, what 3 Knights and Eunuch Li couldn't understand was, why did he dare to rush here? Yu Qianqiu's first reaction was whether or not to run. After he calmed down, he realized that Eunuch Li was carrying the unconscious Yan Juexing on his back. Then he wondered why the two of them brought Yan Juexing here. Then he realized that these two experts were just watching him without making a move. Yu Qianqiu was even more certain that there was something fishy going on. His eyes turned, and with the thought of escaping if he discovered something was wrong, he actually gathered his courage and approached the two of them step by step. Suddenly, a strange light flashed at the bottom of the sea. Xiao xiao. Countless snow-blue light beams shot into the sky. Yu Qianqiu finally saw the terrifying light beams that Wei Chuanqiu had mentioned. With a thought, the Fire Soul Profound Weapon carried him to quickly dodge. 3 Knights and Eunuch Li were naturally no exception. After several waves of attacks broke out at the bottom of the sea, Yu Qianqiu was so scared that he was drenched in sweat. He took some time to take out a piece of extraterrestrial metal essence to experiment. He found that the snow-blue light beams could easily make a hole in the extraterrestrial metal essence like cutting tofu. Now he finally understood how the hole on the crisscrossed reef came to be. He also understood why 3 Knights and the others didn't dare to act rashly. It felt like he was holding his head and forcing himself to come here. It was 2F** King scary. 3 Knights and Eunuch Li could roughly guess why he dared to rush just now. It turned out that he didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Eunuch Li sneered. "Devil Monarch, should we take this opportunity to kill this thief?" Chapter 1195. That was exactly what Demon Lord 3 Knights was thinking. But just as he had the thought, a few more waves of snow-blue light shot out from the bottom of the sea. After dodging for a while, 3rd Knight glanced at the Fire Soul Mystic Soldier protecting Yu Qianqiu. It wasn't a wise move to fight with that monster here. In addition, he knew that Yu Qianqiu had the ability to come and go without a trace. He probably wouldn't be able to do anything to him for a while, so why take the risk? This isn't a good place to fight. Let's continue. Ignore him for now. We'll deal with him when we have the chance. Demon Lord 3 Knights called out and continued flying forward with Eunuch Li, who was carrying Yan Juexing on his back. Yu Qianqiu's heart was pounding from the sudden appearance of this deadly thing. He was indeed thinking of retreating, but when he saw the two fellows carrying the unconscious Yan Zhuixing deeper into the death trap, it was truly suspicious. He had already vaguely guessed that they were also here to search for the blue sea gold essence. He didn't want to see a second demon god appear in the three realms, so he immediately gritted his teeth and followed. The two parties continued advancing through the extremely dangerous blue sea death trap, one in front and one behind. After an entire day, the two parties finally entered the central region of the blue sea death trap. In the periphery, the deadly snow blue light pillars would explode intermittently, but in the central region, they would constantly appear. They would randomly shoot out in all directions, alternating with each other. Although it wasn't a collective explosion, it was even more impossible to figure out a pattern. If one wasn't careful, they would collide with one. When an island with a radius of more than 10 kilometers appeared in front of them, Yu Qianqiu watched as third night, and uniquely landed on the island. From the lush vegetation on the island, he could tell that the island was a relatively large dead zone in the blue sea death trap. Although there were deadly light pillars crisscrossing above the island was safe. And under the seawater, there was a dazzling snow blue light, which allowed Yu Qianqiu to guess that they had arrived at their destination. However, what made Yu Qianqiu speechless was the fact that San Yi and the other man were standing on the island with a sneer on their faces, glaring at him like a tiger watching its prey. Yu Qianqiu cursed inwardly. This is bad. I'm afraid that these two guys won't let me safely land on the island. Thus, he tried to enter the island from the other side. As he expected, the two of them leisurely wandered across the island and waited for his arrival. After the two of them accompanied Yu Qianqiu for a few rounds, Three Knights Demon Lord looked at Yu Qianqiu and laughed. Yu Qianqiu, I want to see how long you can last outside. What a joke. I can hold on as long as I want. Yu Qianqiu was not satisfied with his stubborn mouth, so he teased. If I really can't hold on any longer, and if an accident really happens, I guarantee that you will never know the whereabouts of your son, Yi Tiankong. Don't try to fool me with this. Three Knights Demon Lord sneered. If Konger could cultivate, I might be able to be fooled by you. Unfortunately, he was born without the ability to cultivate. Even with miraculous medicine, he won't be able to live past 200 years. You're just a little thief who's still wet behind his ears. I don't know where you've heard of my son's name, but you're acting all mysterious. It's a pity that you only know the surface but don't know the inside story. You're like a jumping clown showing off in front of this lord. Do I look like a jumping clown? Yu Qianqiu looked at himself, then clicked his tongue and said, What bullshit, Demon Lord, you're just a frog at the bottom of a well. This lord is in a good mood today, so I'll let you broaden your horizons. He revealed a teasing expression and sighed. The God Realm's dragon race has a great technique called the Divine Dragon Empowerment Technique. Even the common peddlers of the mortal world can be imbued with cultivation. I wonder if you, the so-called Demon Lord Three Knights, have heard of it? The moment he said this, the expressions of Demon Lord Three Knights and uniquely changed at the same time. The former suddenly shouted, Yu Qianqiu, is what you're saying true? Ever since Three Knights heard uniquely mention that Yu Qianqiu mentioned Yi Tiankong after the illusory immortal city was destroyed, he had kept this matter in his heart. He felt that Yu Qianqiu wouldn't mention his son for no reason. There had to be a reason, but he hadn't found a suitable opportunity to chat with Yu Qianqiu. Now was a good opportunity, so he naturally wanted to test the truth. He didn't expect to hear the Divine Dragon Empowerment Technique. His heartbeat immediately sped up. What did I say? I didn't say anything. Yu Qianqiu revealed a very surprised expression, then looked at himself up and down, and said with a wronged expression, I'm just a jumping clown. I'm just showing off blindly. As for whether people believe me or not, it's none of my business. Anyway, Yi Tiankong isn't my son, hee. Demon Lord Three Knights wanted nothing more than to slap him into a pulp. Ever since he ascended to the throne of Demon Lord, this was the first time someone dared to tease him in front of his face. He resisted the urge to kill and said in a low voice, You mean to say that Yi Tiankong received the Divine Dragon Empowerment Technique and has a cultivation base, so he's still alive? Yu Qianqiu immediately cackled and said, As for whether your son is still alive or not, I don't know. I only know that there's a guy who can't cultivate but likes to swindle people. He comes from the demon realm, and his name is Yi Tiankong. He tricked a divine dragon into using the divine dragon empowerment technique, and gave him an early small god cultivation base. TSK, impressive. The expressions of the two people on the island changed again. They knew better than anyone what kind of person Yi Tiankong was. He indeed liked to play tricks and swindle people. Yu Qianqiu had already made it so obvious. Even if he deliberately refused to admit it, how could the two not know that he was talking about Yi Tiankong, who had mysteriously disappeared in the demon realm? Yi Tiankong had an early small god cultivation base, so he naturally wouldn't die unless something unexpected happened. Demon Lord Three Knights' calm face twitched, and he said through gritted teeth, "Don't beat around the bush. If Yi Tiankong is still alive, where is he?" "I forgot." Yu Qianqiu, who had just dodged a wave of fatal light beams, said angrily, "Damn it. You're standing on the island leisurely, while I'm risking my life here. How can I have the mood to chat with you?" "I forgot. You're my enemy. There's nothing to talk about with you. I'll just go back." The Flame Soul Profound weapon really did take him back. Demon Lord Three Knights immediately lost his temper. With a pained expression he said sternly, "Stop. I'll let you go to the island." "Damn it. The island isn't yours. It's not up to you to decide. If I want to go, I'll go." Yu Qianqiu's mouth was stubborn, but the Flame Soul Profound weapon still took him away. He wanted to take the opportunity to plant a silver ball on the island as a teleportation coordinate. In the future, he could do it any time and anywhere. If he planted it nearby, he was afraid that one day he would accidentally teleport out and be shot into a bloody hole by the fatal light beam. However, as soon as he turned around, his eyes immediately froze. He stared straight at the island. On the tallest tree in the center of the island, there was a person standing there. Demon Monarch Three Knights and Uniquely quickly turned their heads to look up, and were also shocked. They saw a slender man in white standing quietly on the treetop looking at them. His snow-blue waist-length hair fluttered in the wind. His snow-blue eyebrows flew steeply to his temples. His eyes were also emitting a snow-blue cold light. On his cold cheeks, his lips were slightly snow-blue, and there was a light blue cloud pattern in the center of his forehead. His expression was cold and incomparably lonely as he stood there silently, like a demon or a god. Even Demon Lord Three Knights and Uniquely did not notice any movement when he appeared on the island. The two looked carefully and found that they could not see the depth of his cultivation. The shock in their hearts was indescribable. They did not know when such an expert appeared in the three realms. It was not strange that the two did not recognize this person, but Yu Qianqiu was all too familiar with this person. It was actually Wen Lanfeng, who had been missing for many years. To be precise, Yu Qianqiu also suspected that this person was Wen Lanfeng. They indeed looked exactly the same, but that lonely temperament between heaven and earth was not something that Wen Lanfeng possessed. What made Yu Qianqiu most suspicious was the snow-blue long hair and the abnormality between his brows. It made him not completely certain that this person was Wen Lanfeng, who had been missing for many years. "Who are you?" Demon Lord Three Knights asked solemnly. He sensed an extremely dangerous aura from this person, and so did Uniquely. The two were on unprecedented high alert. "Who am I?" The person's snow-blue eyes revealed a trace of doubt, but his magnetic voice sounded like cold metal. "I hate it when people ask me such questions. It makes me very uncomfortable. So I'm going to kill you." The person's body suddenly burst forth with a suffocating murderous aura, filling the world. He suddenly waved a finger, and a startling snow-blue sword shadow burst forth from his fingertip, causing the world to change color. It directly slashed towards Demon Lord Three Knights and Uniquely like a thunderbolt. The two were shocked, and knowing that they were no match for this person, they quickly dodged. Without saying a word, they braved the great danger, and quickly rushed to the surface to escape. The person's fingertip gently hooked, and the incomparably powerful startling sword shadow was unexpectedly withdrawn, suddenly disappearing without a trace. Two fingers simultaneously bent and flicked, and two slender snow-blue sword lights chased after them at an unbelievable speed. Sky-breaking blood. Demon Lord Three Knights shouted, and the scarlet cloak on his shoulder suddenly fell off and expanded, instantly turning into an incomparably magnificent wall of blood light, cutting across the sea. Boom! Blue light and blood-red light shone everywhere, and countless fine red cloths fluttered in the air, perishing together with the two slender sword lights. Demon Lord Three Knights and uniquely instantly disappeared into the distance. Their luck was not bad, and they actually did not encounter the fatal light pillar erupting from the bottom of the sea. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He didn't expect this person to be so powerful. With a flick of his finger, he was able to make Demon King Three Knight and uniquely flee in panic. They didn't even have the courage to fight him. Just how terrifying was his cultivation. However, what shocked Yu Qianqiu was yet to come. He wanted nothing more than for this person to chase after Demon Lord Three Knights and Eunuch Li and kill them. But who knew that this person would play the game of not chasing after a cornered enemy? Or perhaps he did not even bother to chase after them. His shining snow-blue eyes coldly stared at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was so frightened that he trembled. Wen Lanfeng, what do you want? Chapter 1196. The other person's terrifying and ruthless eyes were colder than cold-blooded animals. Anyone who was glanced at would feel panic. The eyes didn't seem to know him at all. Yu Qianqiu was now quite doubtful whether this person was Wen Lanfeng. Not only was his appearance more strange, but his cultivation was also different from Wen Lanfeng's. But if it really was Wen Lanfeng, why did it seem as if he didn't recognize him? Could it be that he was suppressed by me in the past and now wants to take revenge? Yu Qianqiu was prepared to leave as soon as he noticed that something was wrong. Wen Lanfeng. There was a trace of doubt in the man's cold eyes. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and asked, "Who am I? Do you know me? Why do you also call me Wen Lanfeng?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He didn't understand what the other person meant. While he was stunned, the Fire Soul mysterious weapon dragged him to avoid the fatal light at the bottom of the sea. After stopping, the more Yu Qianqiu thought about the other person's words, the more he felt something was wrong. The other person didn't know who he was? It's not convenient for me to talk here. Can you let me go to the island and talk slowly? Yu Qianqiu tried to ask. Seeing that the other person didn't object, he let the Fire Soul mysterious weapon take him to the island. That person looked at him with a longing gaze, filled with the desire to know. Yu Qianqiu looked at him and carefully sized him up again and again, scratching his chin. He couldn't figure out if this person really didn't know who he was, or if he was just pretending. On second thought, with the other person's cultivation, if he wanted to deal with him, he didn't need to beat around the bush. So he boldly flew over slowly and carefully stood on the same tree with the man. After carefully identifying him face to face again, he found that it was indeed Wen Lanfeng. Listening to what you just said, did someone also call you Wen Lanfeng? Yu Qianqiu asked with some curiosity. The man waved to the valley on the side of the mountain and said, "He said I was Wen Lanfeng and I killed him. He said I had been possessed by the devil, and said I was the sword demon. What does it mean to be possessed by the devil? Am I Wen Lanfeng or sword devil?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned again. He realized that his brain couldn't keep up with the other party's train of thought when talking to such a person. He looked in the direction of the other party's finger, and only saw a small rocky valley. Perhaps it was more appropriate to describe it as a rocky valley, but he didn't see anyone else. He can still speak after being killed by you? What the hell is this? Yu Qianqiu scratched his head awkwardly and smiled. Can I see who you're talking about? As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared without a trace. He was already standing in the valley, nodding at him as if he was asking him to go over. Yu Qianqiu nodded and flew over with the Fire Soul profound weapon. Looking at the direction of his finger, he saw a shallow cave on the stone mountain wall. At a glance, he could see the bottom of the cave. There was a body that had been dried into a human body sitting cross-legged with its head down. Although Yu Qianqiu didn't see the person's face clearly, he was shocked when he saw that there was only one arm. He quickly flashed into the cave. He walked to the corpse and squatted down with a dignified expression. There was a big penetrating wound in the abdomen of the dried corpse. He bent down to look at the face of the corpse. Although the face was dried, he could vaguely recognize who it was. As he expected, it was Li Duxing who had left for a long time. Yu Qianqiu stood up silently and slowly turned to walk out of the cave. Looking at Wen Lanfeng standing on the rock in front of him, he sighed softly. Now he could confirm that the terrifying master in front of him was Wen Lanfeng. And he had roughly guessed something. From Wen Lanfeng's words, he could tell that Li Duxing was killed by Wen Lanfeng. The reason why Li Duxing was killed by Wen Lanfeng was that Wen Lanfeng had lost his memory due to Qigong deviation, which was the sword devil that Li Duxing mentioned before his death. As a result, Wen Lanfeng, who had lost his memory, was confused about whether his name was Wen Lanfeng or sword devil. Yu Qianqiu didn't expect that the two people who had left would have such a thing. One was killed by the other, and the other lost his memory due to Qigong deviation, and became a terrifying master. Yu Qianqiu had no idea what had happened between the two of them for them to end up here. He wanted to ask Wen Lanfeng the reason, but he knew that given Wen Lanfeng's current state, he would not be able to get any answers. Am I Wen Lanfeng or sword devil? Wen Lanfeng's snow-blue hair fluttered in the wind as he stood motionlessly on the rock. He seemed to want to know who he was. Yu Qianqiu looked back at Li Duxing, who had been dead for a long time in the cave. When he looked at Wen Lanfeng again, he didn't have the slightest fear. At this time, no matter how high Wen Lanfeng's cultivation was, he was just a poor man who lost his memory in Yu Qianqiu's eyes. He smiled faintly and said, "Your name is Wen Lanfeng. Sword Devil is your nickname." The light blue cloud pattern between Wen Lanfeng's eyebrows loosened, and he showed a look of sudden realization. He nodded and said, "So my name is Wen Lanfeng, and Sword Devil is my nickname." Damn it. Such a master became a fool. Yu Qianqiu felt that it was not worth it, but his eyes gradually brightened. Wasn't this the trump card to deal with San Yi and the others? He flashed to the front of Wen Lanfeng and said seriously, "I'm your friend Yu Qianqiu, do you remember me?" Yu Qianqiu? Wen Lanfeng's blue eyes were no longer cold, but full of blankness. He shook his head and said, "I don't know you." Yu Qianqiu was embarrassed and waved his hand. "It doesn't matter. I'll take you home. When you go back, you will remember me." He was determined to take Wen Lanfeng back to deal with San Yi and the others. Home? Wen Lanfeng's eyes were still blank. He looked around and said, "This is my home. I am very familiar with it. You don't need to take me home." Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Although Wen Lanfeng was an idiot, it was really difficult to fool him. After a while, he coughed solemnly and said, "Wen Lanfeng, have you even forgotten Lu Yanqing?" Wen Lanfeng was immediately stunned by these words. His eyes flashed with an extremely chaotic look, and he suddenly murmured, "Lu Yanqing, Lu Yanqing, Lu Yanqing." Sure enough, he was still the idiot. He didn't remember anyone, but he still remembered that Lu Yanqing. Yu Qianqiu saw that it was useful to bring out Lu Yanqing. He was secretly happy and continued to provoke, "Yes, it's Lu Yanqing. Have you forgotten her? The place with Lu Yanqing is your real home." "Lu Yanqing, my real home. Lu Yanqing." Wen Lanfeng was still muttering to herself. But what made Yu Qianqiu stunned was that Wen Lanfeng had actually cried silently. Drops of crystal clear light blue tears gently slid down from her eyes, quietly slipping down. Yu Qianqiu suddenly felt a little embarrassed to continue to provoke him. Wen Lanfeng noticed that he was crying. He raised his hand and stretched out 2 fingers to catch a drop of light blue tears. Under the refraction of the sun, the tears shone with a magnificent blue light. He asked, "What is this? Why are my eyes watering uncontrollably?" Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Wen Lanfeng continued to ask, "Why does my calm heart suddenly have a very sad feeling? Why does the name Lu Yanqing make me feel so warm? Why does this name make my heart unable to calm down again? I seem to be very familiar with this person, don't I?" As he spoke, the light blue tears in his eyes continued to fall quietly. Yu Qianqiu nodded and stared at him with a wry smile. "Do you want to see her?" "Lu Yanqing, my real home." Wen Lanfeng suddenly nodded vigorously and said, "I want to see her very much. Please take me to see her. I want to go back to my real home." "Hey, then let's go home. Let's go home." Yu Qianqiu smiled helplessly and casually scattered a few small silver balls into the valley. Then the two disappeared together. The two who fled to the periphery of the Blue Sea death trap saw that the terrifying expert did not chase after them. They looked at each other, and immediately stopped. Demon Lord Three Knights frowned and said, "When did the three realms have such a powerful expert?" Uniquely calmed his lingering fear. After thinking for a long time, he said in a low voice, "He is indeed very powerful." If this subordinate guessed correctly, for such a powerful expert to appear in this place, he must have been tempered by the Blue Sea essence. Even his eyes and hair have turned blue. This is clearly a sign of borrowing too much Blue Sea essence. I remember that when Lord Demon God lost his mind, his eyes were blue for a period of time, but it was not as deep as this one. I thought so too, but if it really is a sign of using too much Blue Sea essence, it is clearly to the extent that it has penetrated into the bone marrow. I have endured the pain of the Blue Sea essence tempering my body. I cannot imagine that a humans can withstand the corrosion of such a huge amount of energy, without being refined. If that is the case, he would have long become one with the Blue Sea essence. How could he still be alive? Demon Lord Three Knights said in shock. Uniquely nodded in agreement, then shook his head in denial. Demon Lord, do you still remember his answer when you asked him? You asked him who he was, and he said that this question made him very uncomfortable. I felt that from his tone. It seemed like he did not know who he was, as if he had already gone mad and lost his mind, becoming a real demon. A demon who had gone mad was a completely different concept from those who followed the demonic path. The former was more accurately described as sick, while the latter cultivated demonic arts and did not share the same path as others. Gone mad? Demon Lord Three Knights thought for a moment, then sucked in a breath of cold air. That seems to be the case, but I really cannot imagine that someone could use too much Blue Sea essence and still survive. Just how strong of a will would that require? I'm afraid that even Lord Demon God could not withstand such a huge amount of Blue Sea essence, right? Heavens! Just what kind of faith would allow a person to persevere like this? It's simply inconceivable. Chapter 1197. In my opinion, this is a good thing, Uniquely said thoughtfully. Demon King Three Knights was puzzled. What do you mean? Since he's lost his mind, as long as we speak carefully and follow his temper, there shouldn't be any big problems. This means that we don't have to run anymore. We can try to get in touch with him. Who knows, there might be unexpected gains. Maybe we can recruit him to serve the Demon King, Uniquely said. Demon King Three Knights thought for a moment, then waved his hand without hesitation. Let's go back. The two carefully turned back the way they came. In Utopia, when Lan Feng, who had been teleported here, stood in front of Ethereal Palace and looked around in confusion. He had no impression of this place at all. Yu Qianqiu asked him to wait, so he stood there and waited. Not long after, a large group of people came out of Ethereal Palace. Everyone who knew when Lan Feng was stunned by his strange appearance. Lu Yanqing, who was walking quickly in front, also stopped and asked Yu Qianqiu suspiciously, "Is he really Wen Lan Feng?" Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly. "Yes, it's him. Just like I said, there's something wrong with him here." He raised his hand and pointed to his head. After Wen Lanfeng's gaze swept across the crowd, he directly fixed on Lu Yanqing. He teleported in front of Lu Yanqing. His eyes shone with a snow blue light as he said, "I remember you." He couldn't help but reach out to touch Lu Yanqing's face. Damn it. Selective amnesia. I remember what I don't want to forget. Yu Qianqiu muttered. Lu Yanqing subconsciously wanted to raise her hand to block his, but after a pause, she let his hand fall on her face and gently caress it. Suddenly, everyone noticed that when Lanfeng's eyes were inexplicably glistening with light blue tears. Those who knew about the relationship between the two could only shake their heads slightly, while those who didn't know looked at each other in dismay. Lu Yanqing gently grabbed his hand and took the opportunity to examine his body. After a while, tears also appeared in her eyes. She bit her lip and choked with a trembling voice. "How did you become like this?" She stretched out her hand to wipe away the blue tears on Wen Lanfeng's face. However, as soon as his hand touched the light blue tears, it immediately released a dazzling blue light that wrapped around Lu Yanqing. Lu Yanqing's entire body trembled on the spot, and her entire body trembled uncontrollably. The expression on her face was extremely painful, as if she was enduring some kind of torture. How could this be? Everyone was shocked, and Wen Lanfeng also seemed a little surprised. Then he seemed to realize something and reached out to touch Lu Yanqing's forehead. All the blue light converged into Wen Lanfeng's fingertips, and Lu Yanqing slowly recovered from the torment. Wei Chuanqiu suddenly tugged at Yu Qianqiu's clothes and whispered, "You found him in the Blue Sea Deadland." Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "Yes, is there a problem?" Wei Chuanqiu coughed slightly and said, "His tears may contain blue sea essence. You can find a way to make him shed more, and then collect it." Yu Qianqiu looked at Wen Lanfeng with some amazement. He didn't know whether Wei Chuanqiu's guess was true or not. If it was true, and even tears contain blue sea essence, then Wen Lanfeng's body contained a lot of blue sea essence? How did you become like this? Lu Yanqing couldn't bear it anymore. She hugged Wen Lanfeng's cheeks and burst into tears. "Seeing you, I really feel like I'm back home." Wen Lanfeng raised his hand and stroked Lu Yanqing's hair. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and said, "You didn't lie to me." "Of course. Why would I lie to you?" Yu Qianqiu nodded and smiled awkwardly. He then waved his hand at everyone and said, "Everyone disperse. Let them talk in private. We won't disturb them." Everyone had no objections and left. Yu Qianqiu pulled Wei Chuanqiu to the edge of the cliff outside the Misty Palace. Hong Tailong saw that the two were sneaking around and didn't want to be left behind. He heard Yu Qianqiu ask, "Are you sure his tears contain blue sea essence?" "I haven't seen it, but you found him in the Blue Sea Deadland. Looking at the phenomenon just now and the changes in his appearance, I think it's very likely." Wei Chuanqiu expressed her doubts. "If it's true, then it's troublesome." Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. "Isn't that a good thing? What trouble?" Wei Chuanqiu was puzzled. "What's good about it?" Yu Qianqiu snapped. "Why don't you think about it? If the blue sea essence can make people like this, do you think I would dare to let Bai Suzhen take that risk? If she becomes like Wen Lanfeng, who do you want me to reason with?" This. Wei Chuanqiu's expression turned solemn. The Myriad Demon Heart Sutra really didn't have any records about the side effects of the blue sea essence. Hong Tailong coughed and interrupted. "Seeing this one, whatever the blue sea essence you guys are talking about reminds me of a legend I've heard in the Dragon Clan." "What legend?" The two turned around and asked in unison. Hong Tailong, who had finally turned the topic to him, chuckled and said, "It's said that the coiling dragon patriarch heard it from Tao. It's said that there's a very mystical thing in the universe called the indigo heart. It contains a tremendous amount of energy, and is a mystical treasure that can test the loyalty of love. It's said that if a man and a woman in love can withstand the test of the indigo heart, they will receive the blessings of the indigo heart, and receive unimaginable benefits." Wei Chuanqiu was stunned at first, but then he smiled and said nothing. Obviously he didn't believe it. Yu Qianqiu also spat. "Ridiculous. T legend. It's a legend. I can't guarantee whether it's true or not." Hong Tailong chuckled and then asked curiously, "Did this Wen Lanfeng really scare away San Yi and that guy in mourning?" Yu Qianqiu didn't answer. Instead he shushed them. The two turned around and saw Lu Yanqing walking towards them with tears still wet. Yu Qianqiu quickly walked over and asked with concern, "You're proficient in medicine. How's Wen Lanfeng's condition? Can he still be cured?" "Yes," Lu Yanqing said with a sad expression. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed. He clapped his hands and praised. "As expected of a divine doctor, even amnesia can be cured. If Wen Lanfeng returns to normal, then it's just around the corner for us to avenge the millions of cultivators in the human world." Hong Tailong and Wei Chuanqiu also nodded excitedly. "Say it. What do you need to cure Wen Lanfeng? As long as it's within my means, I'll find a way to get it for you." Yu Qianqiu rubbed his palms together. Lu Yanqing shook her head sadly. "Nothing is needed. It's very easy to cure his amnesia." The three looked at each other and asked in unison, "What do you mean?" Lu Yanqing's lips trembled a few times before she said in a low voice, "He hasn't lost his memory. He preserved it with great perseverance, but it's suppressed by the powerful energy in his body. If he wants to recover his memory, he must release all the energy in his body, but that energy has already fused with his cultivation. If he releases that energy, his cultivation will completely dissipate. The three were dumbfounded when they heard this. Everyone wanted a Wen Lanfeng with profound cultivation. How could Wen Lanfeng deal with Demon Monarch 3 Knights and the others if he lost his cultivation? Not to mention that it was simply cruel to the extreme for a cultivator to completely disperse his cultivation that he'd bitterly cultivated for many years. If Wen Lanfeng was awake, he might not agree as well. So, should he heal him or not? In fact, there was something Lu Yanqing didn't say. The reason Wen Lanfeng was able to resist the erosion of such a huge energy with his tenacious will was entirely because he had a strong belief that supported him. It was simple to know what this belief was. It was what he remembered after losing his memory. It was his only spiritual pillar. After Lu Yanqing came into contact with it, she found that Wen Lanfeng had forgotten everything. The only thing he remembered was Lu Yanqing. In other words, the reason why Wen Lanfeng could persevere was because of Lu Yanqing. This cruel to the extreme test almost melted Lu Yanqing's heart. She finally understood how deep Wen Lanfeng loved her. Even at the last moment of mental collapse, she would live strong for her. She would never abandon or give up. She would never change to her. She would never give up. She would never give up. Lu Yanqing had just touched the huge energy, which was Wen Lanfeng's tears. She found it difficult to bear, and the pain Wen Lanfeng had endured could be imagined. Lu Yanqing's heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. Yu Qianqiu pondered for a long time and then slowly said, Lu Yanqing, I believe that if you speak, even if Wen Lanfeng is still in amnesia, he will listen to you and dissipate all his cultivation. But do you think Wen Lanfeng can accept the fact that he has lost his cultivation when he wakes up? I don't know, but I don't want him to be hurt again in my life. Lu Yanqing's shoulders trembled as she cried. She knew that Wen Lanfeng had been seriously injured by Bai Changchun because of her. After 100 years of seclusion, he was seriously injured by Bai Changchun again. The reason why Wen Lanfeng became like this today was to improve his cultivation and restore his dignity in front of her. In short, everything was for her. She was worried that Wen Lanfeng would not be able to accept the loss of his cultivation when he wakes up. I understand your feelings. Yu Qianqiu said, Lu Yanqing, do me a favor. I need Wen Lanfeng's cultivation to help me take revenge. But now the only person who can make him willingly obey is you. I hope you can. Lu Yanqing shook her head and interrupted. She knew what he meant without saying anything else. She cried, I can't take advantage of him when he is unconscious. The three of them looked at each other. If this woman did not agree, looking at Wen Lanfeng's appearance and his cultivation, no one could control him. Chapter 1198. In the high-walled courtyard of Misty Palace, Yu Qianqiu stood in the middle, with the Fire Soul Mystic Soldier, and Wen Lanfeng on his left and right. Lu Yanqing and the others looked at them. Lu Yanqing finally agreed to Yu Qianqiu. If Yu Qianqiu tried his best to force her, how could she be Yu Qianqiu's opponent? In the end, she had to agree even if she didn't agree. Thus, she persuaded Wen Lanfeng to follow Yu Qianqiu. However, she agreed to Yu Qianqiu's condition that she would only do this once, and not again. But for Yu Qianqiu, it was enough to bring Wen Lanfeng out once. He would kill whoever he could and settle everything before coming back. Lu Yanqing reluctantly stared at Wen Lanfeng as she walked over. She wanted to say something, but Yu Qianqiu was afraid that she would continue to be naggy, so he waved his hand and disappeared. The three of them appeared outside Illusory Immortal City. They ran to the ruins of Illusory Immortal City, but they couldn't see a single person. They didn't know where Demon King 3 Knights had moved their headquarters to, but it wasn't difficult to find. The three of them casually circled around outside and caught a few Demonic Path soldiers to verify. Only then did they find out that the Demonic Path Army's headquarters was temporarily at Myriad Saint Mountain. On the misty mountain behind Myriad Saint Mountain, Wan Ling stood in front of the cliff outside the manor every day, waiting for Bai Qi's return. Unfortunately, there was no news of him. No one knew what she was thinking. She didn't even know that Yu Qianqiu had brought Wen Lanfeng and the Fire Soul Mystic Soldier behind her. It was only when the white deer beside her was frightened by the terrifying Fire Soul Mystic Soldier that she suddenly turned around. Yu Qianqiu, how did you get in? Wan Ling exclaimed. She quickly looked around as if she wanted to call the police. Bai Qi is in my hands. Yu Qianqiu's words immediately made Wan Ling give up on the idea of calling the police. She shouted in panic. You're talking nonsense. Yu Qianqiu stared at this infatuated woman with an indifferent expression. He found that Wan Ling was less cunning and sharpness compared to before. She had more calmness and tranquility of a married woman. Her charm was even better than before. It could be seen that she had someone to rely on and had calmed down. Yu Qianqiu sighed slightly in his heart, but there was no change on his face, nor did he argue with Wan Ling. He flipped his hand in his sleeve and took out the obsidian underworld light mirror, and shook it in front of her. Wan Ling immediately recognized that it was Bai Qi's item. She turned pale with fright and asked, "What did you do to him?" "What I will do to him depends on the truth of your answer to my question." Yu Qianqiu put away the obsidian underworld light mirror and said indifferently, "If there is a lie, I promise you will never see him again in this life." Wan Ling completely panicked when she heard this. She completely ignored the strange Wen Lanfeng and the Fire Soul Profound Weapon and said helplessly, "What do you want to know? As long as I know, I will not hide anything." "That's good." Yu Qianqiu looked at the surrounding mountains and said indifferently, "I want to know where the important figures of the evil Tao are staying in Myriad Saint Mountain. I only know that Demon King 3 Nights has occupied grandfather's Myriad Saint Palace. As for the situation of the others, I have never left this place. I really don't know anything." Wan Ling was almost begging. "Yu Qianqiu, I beg you to let Bai Qi go, okay? That's really all I know." "I believe what you said." Yu Qianqiu's gaze shot to the highest peak in the distance and said indifferently, "You really want to see Bai Qi?" Wan Ling was also a smart person. She was just confused because she was concerned. Hearing this, she immediately sensed something was wrong and said with a trembling voice, "What did you do to him?" As soon as she finished speaking, the Fire Soul Profound Weapon beside Yu Qianqiu flashed and the colorful flame blurred her eyes. Looking at Wan Ling, who was instantly killed by the Fire Soul Profound Weapon and turned into ashes, Yu Qianqiu said with a sad expression, "Bai Qi wants to give you a hope to live, but I feel that it is too cruel to you. It is better to end this ill-fated relationship. Go." With a light shout, the three of them directly broke through the defensive formation and flew towards the Myriad Saint's palace. Just as they neared the Myriad Saint's palace, countless wooden tendrils suddenly shot out from the Myriad Saint's palace, covering the sky as they tried to stop the three of them. The Fire Soul Profound Weapon immediately rushed towards the countless wooden roots, and the wooden roots that touched it instantly turned into ashes. "Ah!" the woman screamed, and the countless wooden roots retracted. The Clear Sky Great Demon King, who was temporarily guarding this place, rushed out of Myriad Saint Palace. When she saw the enemies, she immediately exclaimed, "It's you guys again!" Without saying a word, she turned around and wanted to run, but with her cultivation, how could she outrun the Fire Soul Profound Weapon? The Fire Soul Profound Weapon chased after her, and was about to kill her with a palm strike. Yu Qianqiu, who had killed his way into Myriad Saint Palace under the escort of Wen Lanfeng, did not notice the Demon King 3 Nights' movements and immediately shouted, "Capture her alive." The Fire Soul Profound Weapon, which was connected to his mind, directly slapped the Clear Sky Great Demon King's back, and a Samadhi true fire poured into her body. Fire was her natural nemesis, let alone the Samadhi true fire. The Clear Sky Great Demon King wilted on the spot, and was directly captured by the Fire Soul Profound Weapon. It grabbed her neck and stood on the roof of the palace. At this moment, the commotion had already alarmed the heroes of the demonic path, and they instantly rushed over from all directions, surrounding Myriad Saint Mountain. Many people still remembered the scene of the Fire Soul Profound Weapon wreaking havoc in the illusory immortal city. When they saw it, they were all shocked, and they were all looking forward to the appearance of the Demon King 3 Nights and uniquely. However, they did not see the two of them appear to defend against the enemy, and they immediately wanted to retreat. However, they did not know if the two of them were really not here, so no one dared to act rashly, and no one dared to escape rashly. Yu Qianqiu and Wen Lanfeng searched around Myriad Saint Palace and killed some demonic path soldiers, but they did not see the figures of the Demon King, 3 knights, and Eunuch Li. Damn it! Are they not back yet? With their cultivation, they should have returned long ago. Yu Qianqiu looked at the cold and empty Myriad Saint Palace and felt suspicious. In the end, he was still not at ease, so he knelt on one knee and pressed his palm on the ground. He used both the earth and metal arts, and very soon he found a dungeon, and it seemed that there was someone locked up. Yu Qianqiu was a little curious. He did not know who was locked up, but he definitely had to save the enemy of his enemy. The two of them immediately rushed into the courtyard of the harem and blasted open the fake mountain in the middle of the courtyard. The entrance to the dungeon appeared in front of the two of them, and they flashed in. In the pitch-black dungeon, there was an iron cell as thick as a child's arm, and on the cold iron floor, a woman was lying, looking abnormally lonely and miserable. Yu Qianqiu looked carefully, and his brows immediately furrowed. This woman was none other than the Mu Tianjiao that he knew. He did not expect that woman who was not inferior to men to actually fall to such a state. She did not even react when he blasted open the dungeon, and it was obvious that she had been restrained. He took out a divine sword, and with a ka, he directly split open the door of the iron cell. He walked over and knelt on one knee, gently supporting the motionless Mu Tianjiao against his body. Mu Tianjiao's blank and helpless eyes fell on his face, and her unfocused gaze gradually focused. When she saw that it was Yu Qianqiu, although she could not move, her eyes began to fill with large teardrops. She did not think that she could live, and she did not think that someone would come to save her, because she knew that Wu Xiong and his son would not give up for her. In fact, her heart was already dead, and life and death were no longer important to her. However, not even in her dreams did she think that at this kind of time, in this kind of place, someone would actually come to save her, and it was Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu quickly removed the restriction on her body, and seeing that she was biting her lips to prevent herself from crying, he could not help but sigh. Mu Tianjiao, why are you here? Could it be that Wu Xiong did not escape with you to the Netherworld God Palace? Hearing that voice that she had not heard for a long time, Mu Tianjiao finally could not help but cry bitterly. She swung her fists and fiercely punched him, then suddenly hugged his neck and buried her head in his shoulder, sobbing uncontrollably. Why is it you? Why is it you who came to save me? Why did you reject me back then? Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly, and really did not know what to say. He then gently patted her back and said, I am about to fight to the death with Demon King, 3 knights and the others. It is very dangerous for you to stay here, so I will first send you to a safe place. Unexpectedly, Mu Tianjiao hugged his neck even tighter, and rubbed his shoulder with all her strength, shaking her head and choking. Don't abandon me, hold me, I want to see the outside world in your arms, I won't affect you, just this once, okay? Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched, but in the end, he still gritted his teeth and hugged her by the waist. He quickly drilled out of the iron cage, and quickly left the dungeon with Wen Lanfeng. Seeing that the Fire Soul Profound soldiers holding the Demon King Qing Tian on the roof did not move, the two also flashed to the roof. Yu Qianqiu looked around, and his gaze directly locked onto Jin Tai in the crowd. He immediately laughed coldly and said, Jin Tai, we meet again, you really made me look for you. Today, it's time for our new and old grudges to be settled. In the air, Jin Tai looked at his colleagues on both sides, and did not want to lose his prestige. He immediately shouted angrily, Yu Qianqiu, how dare you make an enemy of the Demon King? Your death is not far away, and you still dare to talk big. Hutu. Yu Qianqiu suddenly shouted, and quickly observed the expressions of the crowd, because he still did not know who the great Demon King Hutu was. In the crowd, the great Demon King Hutu did not understand, and pointed at Yu Qianqiu and scolded, Cowardly bandit, taking advantage of the Demon King's absence to cause trouble. Wait until the Demon King returns, let's see how arrogant you can be. Haha. Yu Qianqiu looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. I have fought with San Yi several times, and I am still alive and well. What can he do to me? This time, I am looking for him. These words immediately caused the surrounding people to scold, but no one dared to make a move. Mu Tianjiao, who was in his arms, hugged his neck, and personally witnessed the scene of him laughing arrogantly at the heroes of the demonic path. A gratified smile appeared on her face, and she said in a low voice, "Being in your arms is indeed the safest. I have always thought so. Yu Qianqiu, promise me, after I die, please bury me beside my mother." Hearing her voice gradually weaken, Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. He looked down and saw blood flowing out of Mu Tianjiao's lips. He was shocked and quickly checked, and immediately found that Mu Tianjiao had cut off all her meridians. He immediately cried out in alarm, "Mu Tianjiao, what are you doing?" Chapter 1199. I know you killed my father, but I can't hate you. I'm a married woman. But now I'm hugging my father's murderer in front of everyone. I have no face to live. You shouldn't have refused. I want you to never forget me, to take revenge on you. Mu Tianjiao's intermittent and weak voice stopped, and her arms around his neck softened. Her eyes closed, but there was still a satisfied smile on her face. Her red lips were dyed bright and dazzling with fresh blood. Why are you so stupid? Don't we want to live well by fighting and killing? As long as people are alive, everything can be solved. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. Then he hugged Mu Tianjiao's body tightly in his arms and pressed his lips on Mu Tianjiao's blood-stained lips. This scene caused the demonic cultivators in the air to look at each other in dismay, not knowing what was going on. The domineering Great Demon King, who had personally captured Mu Tianjiao, crossed his arms and sneered. This Wu Xiong's wife is a bit interesting. I wonder what Wu Xiong will think if he finds out about this. His wife actually made him a cuckold in public. Yu Qianqiu, the Wu father and son have suffered such a great humiliation. I don't think they will let you off. Amidst the laughter, Yu Qianqiu's lips released the kiss of life and death. Looking at Mu Tianjiao's lost face, he smiled faintly and said, "It turns out that not being fickle and being a sanctimonious person is also a mistake. In fact, how can I not like beauties? In fact, you've always been in my heart. If I had known earlier, I would have slept with you. I only know today that I've always been a coward." As soon as he said this, the surrounding laughter suddenly became louder, but it seemed that they were laughing with a guilty conscience. Fire Soul Mysterious Soldier and Wen Lanfeng did not know what everyone was laughing about, nor did they know what Yu Qianqiu meant. After Mu Tianjiao's corpse was hugged tightly again, it disappeared into Yu Qianqiu's arms in front of everyone's eyes, and was sent to Utopia. The smile on Yu Qianqiu's face suddenly disappeared. He waved his hand and pointed at Jintai and Hutu. "Catch them alive and kill the others. Kill. Kill." When Lanfeng's long blue hair fluttered in the wind, and his whole body shone with a snow-blue radiance. In an instant he shot into the crowd, and the snow-blue sword shadows danced around him. He was like a tiger in a flock of sheep, and no one could block his attack. Rumble. His target was obviously Hutu and Jintai. No one had expected that such a god of killing would suddenly appear. Immediately, they didn't care about anything else. It was more important to run for their lives. Hutu and Jintai fled in panic. However, how could they escape from Wen Lanfeng? Wen Lanfeng grabbed Hutu with one hand, and caught up with Jintai in the blink of an eye. He killed a lot of people with one in each hand, and then flashed back as if nothing had happened. Jintai and Hutu, whose cultivations were sealed, stared at Yu Qianqiu with ashen faces. Yu Qianqiu didn't even glance at them. Instead, he glanced around at the crowd of Devil League warriors, who had just dispersed. No one knew what he was thinking. After a while, he suddenly turned around and slapped Jintai's face over 100 times, scolding, "Let me sing a song. Let me dance." After slapping for a while, he eased the grief and indignation that had accumulated because of Mu Tianjiao's death. Jintai did not know that he was looking for an excuse to vent his anger. After being slapped, he still defended with fear. "Yu Qianqiu, this is all a misunderstanding. I was instigated by that bitch Ji Wu." "Misunderstanding my ass. Is it also a misunderstanding to want to kill me in front of me?" Yu Qianqiu opened his palm and slapped Wen Lanfeng again. Hutu, who was also being held by Wen Lanfeng, was terrified. He didn't know if he would end up like Wen Lanfeng. After being slapped again, Jintai said with a terrified face, Yu Qianqiu, as long as you spare my life, I'm willing to serve you. If you don't believe me, I can give you my natal primordial spirit. It could be said that he was unscrupulous in order to survive. Huta Great Demon King and Azure Sky Great Demon King had terrible expressions. Their natal primordial spirits were in the hands of Demon King 3 nights, so they couldn't offer their loyalty even if they wanted to. Yu Qianqiu did not buy it. He glanced at the 3 and asked, "Where is he?" "I don't know." Jintai and Hutu answered hurriedly, but they all looked at Qing Tian. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows. He pulled the 2 of them from Wen Lanfeng's hands and sent them back to Utopia to be watched by Hong Tailong. Hong Tailong of Utopia's Misty Palace walked around the courtyard with his hands behind his back. He had just taken over Mu Tianjiao's corpse and was cursing his bad luck. He did not expect Yu Qianqiu to send him Jintai and Hutu in the blink of an eye. When he saw Jintai, Hong Tailong's eyes lit up. He laughed wildly and said, "Yu Qianqiu, you're too awesome." His voice immediately attracted a lot of people to watch. It was unknown where Jin Taijing was. The moment he saw Hong Tailong, he immediately panicked and ran. However, with his cultivation sealed, how could he possibly escape? Hong Tailong chased after him and gave him a series of punches and kicks. As he did so, he cursed, "Bastard! You deserve this." Huta stood motionless. He knew he could not run. So he just stood there and accepted his fate. Er Xuejuan and Ji Wu, who came out of the palace, did not expect Jintai to be caught. Er Xuejuan shouted, "Jintai, you bastard!" He immediately rushed over and joined in the beating. The 2 big guys started punching and kicking. Jintai desperately crawled to Ji Wu's feet and shouted, "Madam, save me!" Ji Wu, who was originally indifferent, suddenly became angry out of humiliation. She shouted, "Who is your madam?" She kicked his head several times. Huda felt a chill. She did not know how many people Jintai had offended in the celestial realm. After venting his anger, Hong Tailong saw that Jintai would die if he continued to beat him. He quickly stopped the 2 of them and said, Stop. You can't kill him. He's still useful to Yu Qianqiu." Jintai, who was beaten black and blue, quickly got up and hid behind Hong Tailong. He could not see the majesty of the celestial emperor anymore. On the roof of Wanxing Palace, Yu Qianqiu grabbed Demon King Qing Tian's hair and pulled him from the hands of the Fire Soul Mystic Soldier. He said indifferently, "Where is San Yi?" "I really don't know." Demon King San Yi and Eunuch Li carried the fainted Yan Juexing away and have not returned. He asked me to temporarily stay in Wanxing Palace, but he really did not tell me where to go. The great Demon King of Qing Tian complained as he pulled open his clothes. His green clothes slid down, exposing his beautiful body to the air. He grabbed Yu Qianqiu's hand and said seductively, "I've served the demon gods and the previous demon monarchs, and I've never disappointed them. As long as you let me live, I'm willing to serve you for the rest of my life. I'll definitely be *teach." Yu Qianqiu punched her in the eye. He was not in the mood to play with her now. Demon King Qing Tian screamed and was thrown back to Utopia. The people from Misty Palace suddenly saw a naked woman and looked at each other. They did not know what Yu Qianqiu was doing outside. Yu Qianqiu, who wanted to search for San Yi, suddenly exclaimed, "Oh no! Are they still looking for Blue Sea Essence in the Blue Sea Death Trap?" He did not want another Wen Lanfeng or a second demon god to pop out of the demonic path. Just as he was about to rush back to Blue Sea Death Trap, he suddenly saw 3 streams of light leading a group of streams of light rushing over. When he focused his eyes, Demon King San Yi, Eunuch Li, and Yan Juexing were already standing in the sky. The scattered demonic path heroes had also returned. At this moment, Yan Juexing's eyes were shining with alternating red and blue light, as if he was fighting something in his heart. He looked at Yu Qianqiu as if he did not see it. "Good. Very good. They're all here. This saves me the trouble of looking for them one by one." Yu Qianqiu looked at Yan Juexing and chuckled. When Yan Juexing heard his voice, his body trembled slightly. and the alternating red and blue light in his eyes flickered even faster. Demon King San Yi completely ignored Yu Qianqiu and cupped his hands at Wen Lanfeng, whose blue hair was fluttering in the wind. You are a wise man. Do not listen to the slanderous words of a lowly man, and be used by him. I, Demon King San Yi, am willing to become allies with you. After my demonic path unifies the three realms, I am willing to share the world with you. What do you think? Wen Lanfeng's snow-blue eyes were calm. This was the first time the demonic path heroes heard Demon King San Yi admit defeat like this. For a moment, they could not help but feel surprised. Could it be that Demon King San Yi and Eunuch Li were not this person's match? They only guessed one thing, but they did not know that the reason why Demon King San Yi was so polite to Wen Lanfeng was because he knew that Wen Lanfeng had lost his mind and wanted to win him over to his side. Otherwise, he would not have dared to bring everyone back here. Knowing that a terrifying expert from the Blue Ocean Death Trap was here, Yu Qianqiu roughly guessed it and laughed. San Yi, I'm afraid your plan is going to fail. He pointed at the three of them and said angrily, Wen Lanfeng, kill the three of them. At this moment, Yan Juexing, who heard Yu Qianqiu's voice again, suddenly raised his arms and shouted at the sky. Yu Qianqiu, I'm going to kill you. His voice reverberated in the sky. Almost at the same time, the red light in his red and blue eyes completely overshadowed the blue light. He stared at Yu Qianqiu like a sharp blade. At this moment, Yan Juexing had successfully found the blue ocean essence to cleanse his meridians. His cultivation had directly crossed the Demon General level to the Demon King level, soaring to the late-stage Great Demon King level. He was only one step away from the God level. He did not expect to see Yu Qianqiu in front of him the moment he woke up. The humiliation of his mother and sister's death immediately surged in his mind. He desperately pounced at Yu Qianqiu, wishing he could tear Yu Qianqiu alive. Wen Lanfeng, who was emitting snow-blue light, had just rushed out, and the two immediately met. Demon King San Yi and Eunuch Li exclaimed in unison, Yan Juexing is back! They knew how powerful Wen Lanfeng was, and they also knew that Yan Juexing was not Wen Lanfeng's match at all. Chapter 1200. They thought they could persuade Wen Lanfeng, but they didn't know the story behind Wen Lanfeng. They didn't know Lu Yanqing's great influence on Wen Lanfeng, and they didn't expect this to happen. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been sent here. Seeing Wen Lanfeng charging at him, a black full moon suddenly appeared in front of Yan Juexing. As his cultivation rose, so did the power of the devil blade. The black and red baleful aura intertwined like endless ghosts, and the devil blade's edge was like a soul-stirring cold thunderbolt streaking across the sky. Even the onlookers were shocked. A snow-blue sword light shot out to meet the black full moon above his head. Boom! The blue light exploded and dispersed, and the devil blade was sent flying into the sky, turning into a small black dot. Wen Lanfeng's eyes flashed with blue light. He didn't expect a late-stage immortal emperor to be able to block his attack. He waved his hand and another sword light shot out. The small black dot in the distance suddenly grew bigger, and the full moon returned with the momentum of thunder, blocking the blow again in an instant, using the curved tip of the wheel to defuse the blow. With the huge impact force, it turned into a ferocious and rapid spinning wheel. Instead, it slashed at Wen Lanfeng in the air, bringing with it a strong gust of wind that exploded. Yu Qianqiu was secretly shocked. He didn't expect Yan Juexing to become so powerful. Demon King Three Knights and Eunuch Li were both surprised and happy. They were happy that Lord Demon God's Devil Blade was indeed extraordinary. But they were shocked that Yan Juexing would be in danger if he continued fighting. Sky Devil Fist. Demon King Three Knights raised a monstrous demonic aura and waved his arm. A huge fist shadow the size of a mountain blasted at Wen Lanfeng. Demon Restriction Wheel. Eunuch Li slapped his palm, and a dozen shining white halos shot at Wen Lanfeng. In order to save Yan Juexing, the three of them attacked together with Yan Juexing's Devil Blade. Wen Lanfeng sensed danger. His eyes emitted a blue light. He swung his long, snow-blue hair, and a jagged, dazzling snow-blue light burst out from his body. He was like a blue sun that shone brightly. Boom, boom, boom. With three loud explosions, The powerful shockwaves instantly destroyed all the peaks and valleys of the Myriad Saints' mountain. Countless disciples of the Myriad Saints' palace were annihilated amidst their screams, and the demonic cultivators scattered in all directions. Fortunately, Yu Qianqiu had the protection of the Fire Soul Profound weapon beside him. Otherwise he would have to flee for his life as well. However, the Myriad Saints' palace beneath his feet had already been reduced to ashes in an instant. The Sky Devil Fist and the Forbidden Demon Wheel were smashed in an instant, and the Devil Blade was shaken away at the same time. When Lanfeng's white robe fluttered in the strong astral wind, and his snow-blue long hair fluttered in all directions, the blue light in his eyes shone brightly, and the blue cloud pattern between his eyebrows shone brightly, like a sword demon descending from heaven. As his body spun in the air, he waved his arms and shot out a dozen snow-blue sword shadows from his fingertips. Not good, the three of them exclaimed at the same time. However, a few sword shadows directly broke through Eunuch Li's defense and pierced through his chest at an unbelievable speed. Before he could use teleportation to dodge, a few pillars of blood spurted out from his chest. Eunuch Li clutched his chest in disbelief as blood began to flow from the corner of his mouth. Demonic succubus doppelganger. Demon King 3 Knights raised his eyebrows and clapped his palms. His body immediately turned into dozens of phantom shadows and exploded. A few shocking sword shadows that were shooting over at high speed missed. At this moment, Yan Juexing had also awakened from his rage. He also used the demonic succubus doppelganger technique, but he couldn't keep up with Demon King 3 Knights' speed. Just as the phantom shadows separated, he was pierced back to his original form by a few sword shadows. Fortunately, the Devil Blade returned in time to protect him, blocking the other few sword shadows for him. Boom! The Devil Blade let out a mournful cry, and Yan Juexing, who was behind the Devil Blade, fell to the ground with blood spurting out of his eye sockets. The Devil Blade that was shaken away shot back again, and hooked onto Yan Juexing's clothes, trying to escape with him. Meanwhile, Eunuch Li clutched his chest and forced himself to flee. However, the two of them were too slow. When Lanfeng's fluttering blue long hair made a hissing sound in the air. In the blink of an eye, she caught up to Eunuch Li. She raised her arm, and a snow-blue light burst out from her palm, condensing into a huge sword shadow made of pure energy. She held it in her hand and swung it, cutting Eunuch Li into two. Blood splattered from the sky. No. In the distance, Demon King 3 Knights let out a heaven-shaking mournful cry. When Lanfeng chased after Yan Juexing again, she slapped the side of the Devil Blade with her palm, sending it flying. Her other hand drew out a cold light and cut Yan Juexing into two. After killing two in an instant, she turned into a stream of light with a swish of her blue hair, and chased after Demon King 3 Knights with her sword. Demon King 3 Knights knew that he wasn't a match for this person, so he used the Devil Light glimpse to escape. The evil Dao heroes who were watching the battle from afar were also scared out of their wits as they fled for their lives. Great! Yu Qianqiu applauded excitedly. He didn't expect Wen Lanfeng to be so powerful. However, when he saw the fallen Yan Juexing's body gush out a ball of black light, Yu Qianqiu turned pale with fright and shouted angrily, "Kill!" The Fire Soul Profound weapon immediately rushed over, wanting to exterminate Yan Juexing completely. It chased after the ball of black light, as if it was also very afraid of the true Samadhi fire. Boom! There was a loud sound in the air. Yu Qianqiu suddenly looked up and saw that the void had been torn open again. An incomparably terrifying aura seeped out to the vast land. That familiar giant devil claw once again stretched out from the sky and grabbed the Fire Soul Profound weapon, causing it to explode into the true Samadhi fire. A ball of devil chi gushed out from the devil claw to shake off the true Samadhi fire. She stretched out 2 fingers to summon the giant devil blade. With a light flick of the 2 fingers, the devil blade rumbled in the air like a thunderbolt, creating a black devil flame that chased after Wen Lanfeng like a black meteor. That imposing manner was truly earth-shattering. When Lanfeng suddenly turned back, blue light shone brightly in his eyes. Blue light burst out from his whole body and quickly converged. His whole body instantly turned into a giant blue sword shadow, and forcefully collided with the black meteor that was crashing towards the heaven and earth. Bang! The heaven and earth were shrouded in blue light and black light. Even the light of the sun was thousands of times inferior. The soil on the ground was monstrous and pushed away in all directions. Without protection, Yu Qianqiu directly hid back in Utopia to avoid the wind. After avoiding the wind, he appeared again. At this time, there was a huge pit with a radius of 100,000 miles under Yu Qianqiu's feet. The giant devil blade that stood tall was surrounded by a monstrous devil qi. It stood motionless on the ground, and there were many snow-blue stars around it. When Lanfeng was nowhere to be seen, and the giant devil claw that tore the void had disappeared, there was only a pair of dreamy and indifferent eyes looking down from the sky. When Lanfeng was dead? Yu Qianqiu looked at the snow-blue stars and suddenly trembled uncontrollably. He waved his arm and pointed at the indifferent eyes looking down from the sky and shouted angrily, "Devil God! I swear to kill you!" The indifferent eyes looked at him for a while, faintly revealing some indifference and disdain, and gradually disappeared in the sky. The giant devil blade that stood tall between heaven and earth shrank in an instant and absorbed all the devil qi. With a swoosh, it flew into the distant sky, and no one knew where it went. "Devil God! I swear to kill you!" Yu Qianqiu pointed at the sky where the devil eye disappeared and shouted angrily again. As soon as the devil blade left, the countless snow-blue stars that had been stunned suddenly began to spin faster and faster. When they gathered together, a dazzling blue light erupted. After the light disappeared, when Lanfeng's figure fell heavily from the sky and fell to the ground, unconscious and motionless, Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He didn't expect that a person that was turned into ashes could be reformed. He immediately turned into a stream of light and rushed over, holding Wen Lanfeng to check. Wen Lanfeng's face and body were covered with blue blood. He was in a deep coma, but his bodily functions were still intact. He was not dead yet. Yu Qianqiu was pleasantly surprised. He didn't expect that Wen Lanfeng could survive the devil god's attack. The blue sea essence was indeed magical. At this moment, streams of light rushed over from all directions. Yu Qianqiu's expression froze. He knew that Demon King 3 Knights and the others had returned, now that he had lost the Fire Soul mystic weapon. And when Lanfeng was seriously injured and unconscious, he couldn't stay here any longer. He immediately disappeared with Wen Lanfeng in his arms. Demon King 3 Knights, who had rushed back, floated in the center of the huge crater. He looked around in shock. He saw the demonic claw that tore through the void. It was the demonic claw of the demonic god technique. He could recognize it at a glance. The demonic cultivators who rushed over also looked at the endless pit in shock. The domineering Great Demon King floated behind Demon King 3 Knights and said with lingering fear, "It seems that Lord Devil God personally tore through the void and attacked. It was Lord Devil God who saved me." The excited Demon Lord 3 Knights nodded heavily. He raised his head to look at where the demon god had torn open the void, then suddenly knelt down on one knee in the void with great sincerity, prostrating himself in front of the demon god. The demonic cultivators also knelt down and bowed in the same direction, Utopia's misty palace. As soon as Yu Qianqiu walked into the palace with the unconscious Wen Lanfeng in his arms, everyone exclaimed and surrounded him. Lu Yanqing even opened her arms and snatched Wen Lanfeng from Yu Qianqiu's hands. Kneeling on the ground, she stroked Wen Lanfeng's messy blue hair with trembling hands and cried, "What happened to him? How did he get hurt like this? Didn't you say he would be fine with his cultivation?" Hong Tailong also gasped, pointing at the unconscious Wen Lanfeng and asking Yu Qianqiu, "What's going on? With his cultivation, who else could injure him to this extent? Even in the god world, he can be considered an expert." The muscles on Yu Qianqiu's face twitched fiercely and he said gloomily, "Who else but that shameless devil god?" The devil god tore through the void and attacked again. "Devil god!" The crowd exclaimed in unison. To them, this was such an unreachable figure. The third time. It's the third time. Yu Qianqiu clenched his teeth and gestured to the crowd. "This is the third time that guy has attacked me so brazenly. They say it's not the third time. That bastard devil god has gone too far." Chapter 12:01. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to say. Yu Qianqiu suddenly grabbed Hong Tailong's clothes and said sternly, "Isn't it said that the experts of the divine realm are not allowed to attack the lower realms? Why does the demon god attack again and again without anyone stopping him?" Hong Tailong helplessly let go of his hand, shook his head and sighed. The other experts of the divine realm naturally don't dare to do so. But the demon god is the #1 expert of the divine realm, who can do anything to him if he doesn't abide by the rules. Unless Dao personally takes action, no one in the divine realm dares to do anything to him. This is the capital of his arrogance. After saying that, he squatted beside Wen Lanfeng and carefully examined him. He then patted Wen Lanfeng's chest and said with relief, "Fortunately, it's nothing serious. With his cultivation base, he should recover very quickly. To be able to survive the demon god's attack is already a great fortune and misfortune. My fire soul mystic weapon has been destroyed by the demon god's attack." Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth, his heart filled with hatred. Once the demon god attacked, even the fire soul mystic weapon's chance of resurrection was cut off. He didn't know how the demon god did it. As long as he's fine. Hong Tailong stood up and gestured to everyone to carry Wen Lanfeng in. Bai Suzhen and the other women immediately helped Lu Yanqing up and comforted her, while Wei Chuanqiu and the other men carried Wen Lanfeng into the room. At this time, Hong Tailong turned around and patted Yu Qianqiu's shoulder, saying with a smile, "The fire soul mystic weapon can be refined again. Anyway, there are many experts in the divine mausoleum. The key is that you now have the metal spirit and earth spirit. After devouring them, not only will your cultivation base soar, you can also refine a large number of earth soul mystic weapons and gold soul mystic weapons. All in all, it's a big profit this time." As soon as these words came out, the haze on Yu Qianqiu's face immediately dispersed. Only then did he remember that Jintai and Hutu had been captured by him. He immediately sneered and said, "Damn it! I was almost confused by the demon god. How could I forget this? Where are the captured people?" "Locked up. By the way, that woman's body, they said it was the wife of Jintai's subordinate. What's going on?" Hong Tailong had a curious look on his face, as if he was trying to find some clues from Jiang Chen's face. He said enticingly, "If she is very important to you, why don't we buy her and bring her to the mausoleum of the god of sin? She might have a chance of resurrection there." Yu Qianqiu's face darkened. He pondered for a while and said slowly, "No need. She committed suicide. Before she died, she wanted me to bury her beside her mother. I should fulfill her wish. What's more, since he was dead, why bother with resurrecting after countless years? He might as well turn over a new leaf and start a new life, forgetting all the happiness and unhappiness of his previous life. Even if I can really be reborn, even if I die, I don't want to hide in the mausoleum of the god of sin and spend countless years and a days. It's better to end everything once and for all. You don't want to be reborn." Hong Tailong was taken aback. He then chuckled strangely and said, "Is it because you robbed someone else's tomb in the mausoleum of the god of sin, and are afraid of retribution if you hide in the mausoleum of the god of sin? So, this is called gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. You can think whatever you want." Yu Qianqiu let out a breath and said, "Where is she? I'm going to fulfill her last wish." Hong Tailong led him to the room where Mu Tianjiao's body was kept. Yu Qianqiu stared at her quietly for a while, before extending his palm. A water dragon emerged from his palm, and gently washed away the dirt and bloodstains on Mu Tianjiao's face. He then carried her and disappeared from the room with Hong Tailong. The two of them appeared in a valley not far from the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. They could see traces of a fight, but the two of them did not pay too much attention to it. They flashed into the air and looked at the town that was almost in ruins. The entire town was like a dead land, with not a single living person in sight. When the two of them arrived at the dilapidated Four Links Chamber of Commerce, they discovered a troublesome matter. Where was the grave of Mu Tianjiao's mother? Fortunately, the two of them found Nan Tianlong, who was struggling at death's door and had lost an arm. If they didn't rescue him in time, he would probably be dead. Hong Tailong quickly performed the rescue, and it took a while for Nan Tianlong to recover. However, Hong Tailong secretly transmitted his voice. His injuries are too severe. I'm helping to keep him alive, but he won't be able to hold on for long. Ask whatever you want to ask. Nan Tianlong, on the other hand, stared blankly at Mu Tianjiao, who was in Yu Qianchou's embrace, and 2 streams of tears flowed down his cheeks. When the demonic path appeared, too many people died. Yu Qianchou was already numb to it. He could only sigh and say, Nan Tianlong. Mu Tianjiao's last wish was to be buried together with her mother. Where is her mother's grave? Nan Tianlong whimpered and said vaguely, 50 miles to the north in the flower field. Yu Qianchou carried Mu Tianjiao and turned to leave. As a result, Hong Tailong's hand on Nan Tianlong's back loosened, and Nan Tianlong could no longer breathe. He fell to the ground with a thud. Without turning his head, Yu Qianchou sighed and said, Bring him along. The 2 of them carried Nan Tianlong and Nan Tianlong to a place 50 miles to the north. In the flower field, there were 2 tombs side by side. When Yu Qianchou landed and saw Mu Bing's name on the tombstone on the left, he knew they had arrived. Yu Qianchou used the earth art to build a grave beside the tombstone on the right. He then used the metal art to cast a golden coffin and place Mu Tianjiao inside. After covering the coffin, he buried Nan Tianlong beside Mu Bing before helping the 2 of them erect tombstones. Before leaving, Yu Qianchou found a pine tree sapling from a nearby mountain and planted it beside Mu Tianjiao's grave. He used the wood art to make the pine tree grow rapidly into a huge tree to shelter Mu Tianjiao from the wind and rain. After doing all this, he held on to Mu Tianjiao's tombstone and stood there for a long time. Then he left with Hong Tailong. He did not say a single word from the beginning to the end. In Utopia's military camp, Yu Qianchou stood on the platform and looked down at Jin Tailong, Hutu, and Qing Tian. It was unknown who had been kind enough to throw a woman's clothes for Qing Tian to wear. I have some questions to ask you. You'd better answer me honestly, and you might have a chance to live. Yu Qianchou did not waste any time. He looked at the 3 trembling people and asked, Did Wen Rui leak the secret to 3 knights when he attacked the realm of the Divine Ruin? Yes. Jin Tailong and Qing Tian answered immediately. Qing Tian added, Yan Juixing is Wen Rui's master. Huda's face stiffened. He really did not know about this. Demon Eye Ecstasy. It seems like Wen Rui has always been controlled by Yan Juixing. Yu Qianchou nodded. His hands were clenched into fists behind his back. Right now he only hated himself. He regretted not listening to Zhang Peng's words in a moment of soft-heartedness, causing the entire army to be annihilated. His sin was unforgivable. It's not time for the realm of the Divine Ruin to open yet. How did 3 knights get in? Yu Qianchou said in a gloomy tone. Huda's face became miserable again. He still did not know about this. Jin Tailong lowered his head guiltily. In the end, Qing Tian Great Devil King sold him out on the spot. She pointed at him and said loudly, Demon King 3 knights did not know the method to enter the realm of the Divine Ruin. It was Jin Tailong who suggested that Demon King 3 knights go to the ancient forest to find Mu Yuanzi. Jin Tailong even personally accompanied 3 knights to the ancient forest. Only then did 3 knights have the method to open the realm of the Divine Ruin? Jin Tailong looked at Qing Tian with resentment, and immediately knelt down in front of Yu Qianchou. He hurriedly explained, I had no choice. Yu Qianchou expressionlessly looked at him and said word by word. In other words, the method to enter the realm of the Divine Ruin was leaked by Mu Yuanzi. Since you went to the ancient forest with 3 knights, then tell me everything in detail. You cannot hide anything. Otherwise, you will die a horrible death. If you don't believe me, you can try. Jin Tailong was eager to push all responsibility away. He immediately told the story of how he and Demon King 3 knights went to the ancient forest to find Mu Yuanzi. At the same time, he emphasized that it was 3 knights who forced him to go with them. He did not say a single word when he got there, and Mu Yuanzi's attitude towards him was very bad. It seemed like he wanted to tell Yu Qianchou that he, 3 knights, and Mu Yuanzi had always been at odds with each other. However, he had no way of proving that he and Yu Qianchou were on the same side. After learning what had happened, Yu Qianchou was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. That old guy could clearly hide in the wood killer sea without any worries. As long as he didn't come out, Demon King 3 Knights couldn't do anything to him. However, he didn't have any self-respect, and thought that it had nothing to do with him even if everyone outside died. Yu Qianqiu immediately shouted angrily towards the distance. Mu Yuanzi, do you really think that you are the local tyrant of the 3 realms and no one dares to touch you? Others can't enter the wood killer sea, but I can come and go as I please. Just you wait. His voice reverberated, filled with resentment. It's not worth getting angry with someone like that. We can slowly deal with them. Hong Tailong coughed, reminding him how to deal with the 3. Yu Qianqiu suddenly stared at the 3 and sneered. Jin Tailong, stay. The others will be temporarily locked up. Hearing that, Jin Tailong immediately begged for his life, kneeling and kowtowing. In order to survive, he would do anything. Usually such people were the most dangerous. Zhang Ping quickly brought his men, and escorted Ho Tu and Qing Tian away. Before they left, the 2 of them rejoiced and looked at the crying Jin Tailong with a pitiful gaze. When the other 2 couldn't see what was happening here, Yu Qianqiu gave Hong Tailong a meaningful glance. Hong Tailong flashed behind Jin Tai and slammed his palm onto Jin Tai's head. Pung! Jin Tai's head instantly exploded, causing golden dust to fill the sky and drift in all directions with the wind. It was as if the entire utopia had turned into a world of golden dust. Even the people from Misty Palace flashed outside, looking at the beautiful golden world far away. It was even more dazzling than fireworks. An hour later, all the flying golden powder had fallen down, and the surrounding area of tens of miles had become a dazzling golden field under the sunlight. Hong Tailong held a wriggling white ball of light in his palm. He immediately laughed and said, Jin Tailong, stop resisting pointlessly. Once this old dragon erases the memories of your primordial spirit, all the grudges between us will be written off. His 2 palms quickly hugged the white ball of light, and when the white ball of light completely stopped wriggling, he tossed it onto the general selection stage. Holding the white ball of light, Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth and sucked it into his stomach like a whale drawing water. Then he quickly sat cross-legged on the general selection stage and closed his eyes. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.